Leute, was geht ab? Willkommen wieder zurück zu einem Livestream auf meinem Kanal. Ja Leute, es ist schon jetzt seit einer Weile, dass ich keinen Livestream auf das gemacht habe. Der Grund ist, es war ein technischer, es gibt ein Problem auf meinen, auf einen von meinen Accounts, aber ich bin auf einen zweiten Account, den ich eigentlich habe auf meinem Laptop, und der hat dann funktioniert, dass ich auf YouTube einmelden konnte. Auf den anderen konnte ich einfach irgendwie nicht einmelden, aber dazu habe ich gedacht, ich hatte noch einen zweiten Account. Ich hatte gedacht, wieso soll ich mich nicht dort besser einmelden? Und dann habe ich eingemeldet und es hat funktioniert. Und ja, heute sind wir hier für zwei Geschichten anzuhören. Der Magis Po und Dead is Upon Us. Und vielleicht, wenn wir noch Zeit haben, Blood Moon noch anhören. Und ja Leute, hoffentlich sind ihr bereit. Ich wünsche euch viel Spaß in den ersten Part von Bobschul Full Stories. All My Stories by Listing Part 1. Und ja Leute, viel Spaß.
But he'll vigorously deny it. There was a lot you could say about Paw Patrol police officer and squad leader, Chase. You could say he was a natural leader, brave, daring, athletic, popular, friendly, and even childish at times, but he'll vigorously deny it. Of course, one word all his friends always said that came to their minds was workaholic. It wasn't that Chase didn't know how to have fun, or even relax, but did tend to get too caught up in acting as a professional at times to the point where he often forget when he didn't need to. Whether it was training, patrolling, planning new team tactics, testing equipment, or even cleaning the lookout up, Chase had a bad habit of getting too caught up in the moment. Thankfully, Marshall was always there to drag his sorry butt away from duties and towards town where the two could relax. "Come on, Marshall, did you have to drag me by my tail in front of everyone?" asked Chase, glaring at his best friend. "Would you rather have me use the rope?" asked Marshall, grinning as the two stopped at a corner as the crossing light turned red. "Besides, you were driving everyone stir crazy with your antics." "All I was doing was making sure the lookout was secure." "We did have a break-in last month after all," replied Chase, huffing. "That was just Callie chasing after Chiquetta who took her mouse toy," giggled Marshall. Chase sighed, walking ahead of his best friend as the light signaled to walk. "Okay, so maybe I was a bit overworked." "Yup, and so here I am to bring you out to town for some fun," said Marshall as he led Chase to the center of town where they walked under a giant banner that read Town Flea Market. Thankfully, it didn't have real fleas for sale, but trinkets and goods you normally didn't find in stores that people were giving out for free. "Whoa, look at all the cool stuff," replied Chase as he walked over to one booth that held widely shaped glasses and vases. He made a few funny faces in front of them before spotting Marshall near a magic shop that was selling all kinds of magician gear. The dally waved a wand that he picked from a hat full of them, and out came a set of fireworks that spooked the poor pup into the air and landed on the hat tail first. The wands all activated, sending Marshall flying into the air with cracks of fire and sparkles behind him as he landed in front of Chase. Opening his eyes, he giggled and said, "I'm good. Just having a sparkle of a time." "Hee hee hee hee," chuckled Chase, shaking his head. "Come on, sparkle butt." He pointed to Marshall's haunches, which were covered in sparkle dust that the Dalmatian shook off. "Let's see what else is around." The two pups continued onward until they were in the center of the town where Mayor Goodway was handing some balloons to some children before wishing them a good time. She spotted the two pups before smiling at them. "Ah, Chase. Marshall. So nice to see you. How are you enjoying Adventure Bay's flea market?" "It's pretty cool, Mayor Goodway," replied Chase, watching the happy folks pass by. "I've never seen so many booths before." "Well, we've had a few visitors from out of town decide to come in and put up some of their stands. We even have a dog with her own stand nearby," replied Mayor Goodway. "Really? A dog stand owner? We gotta see that," replied Marshall, barking with excitement. "Sure, she's down that way and to the left. If you see anything you like at her shop, or any others, please let them know to forward the bill to me," replied Mayor Goodway. "You don't have to do that for us, Mayor," replied Chase, blushing from such a kind act. Marshall was just as equally red as he shook his head in agreement. "Nonsense, after what you pups have done for this town, I would be honored. Now, if you excuse me, I need to see how Chicoletta is doing at our booth," replied Mayor Goodway. "You have a booth, Mayor?" asked Marshall. "Oh yes, I have a rare set of corn kernels from around the world. I thought it would be best to let Chicoletta handle that while I gave these balloons. See you around," she replied before walking away with a wave. The two friends looked at each other and smirked. "How much do you want to bet that Chicoletta's eaten half of those kernels by now?" asked Chase. "Only half? When it comes to corn, Chicoletta is like rubble at a buffet table," laughed Marshall as the two made their way in the direction Mayor Goodway told them. It didn't take them long to discover the booth, and it was quite an eyesore. It was a full-on black tent with purple symbols on it that neither pup recognized. Entering inside, the two found themselves shivering as if they walked into a sudden chill that made it feel 20 degrees colder inside. Unlike the artifacts outside in the other booths, the stuff inside here was creepy. There were strange dolls, china pots that were in various designs, books that were old, moldy, and hands with eyes in them. Marionettes hanging from strings above. Strange glowing orbs with smoke or lightning in them. Amulets and crowns of Eastern design that looked both heavy and mystical. It was like entering a dark realm of mystery. "Emma, maybe we should leave," replied Marshall, shivering and shaking in the knees. "This place is giving me the creeps." "Why, yeah," replied Chase, feeling just as uncomfortable. However, before they could leave, they turned around and jumped in shock upon seeing an elderly English golden retriever with one pale eye staring at them with a toothy grin. Said set of teeth was missing a few too. She wore a purple cloak with a hood covering half her face as she strolled forward as if on smoke. Marshall and Chase looked at each other, both unsure of what to do as the strange elderly dog looked down at them. "And what has fate brought before me today? 2 young pups? Oh, darlings, TSK. You come in here not knowing what fortune has in store for you," she replied. We were just leaving," replied Chase, nervously smiling. "Why yeah, LL leaving," replied Marshall. "Oh, leaving so soon? You see nothing that interests you in Morgana's tent?" She leaned forward. "Nothing calling for you?" Chase was about to say something when he felt weird. Like there was a fuzzy feeling in the back of his head. A small tingle, something that was bothering him. Marshall instead spoke, "We're not interested." "Thank you, goodbye." Marshall made his way for the exit, but just as Chase was about to follow, the pale retriever stopped him with her paw. "No, there is something calling you. Be it fate or chance, you cannot prevent the wheel's sudden turn of your destiny." Chase looked at the grinning dog lady before looking to a nervous Marshall. "I'll be with you in a moment." "But..." "It's okay. I'll be fine," replied Chase. "I mean, she's just a crazy old dog lady. It's not like she can cast a spell on me." Marshall whimpered a bit but nodded and soon left, leaving the two alone. Morgana put her paw away and presented her wares around them. Come find what it is that seeks you out. Be it good fortune or bad, it shall change you forever." Chase didn't say anything, but that darn annoying buzzing in his head was not stopping. "She must have done some kind of gypsy trick on me. Fine. I'll just get something and go." He sniffed around, trying to find something interesting that would get the dog lady to let him leave in peace, when he stopped upon a small desk containing what looked to be a shriveled dead paw. It smelled like a monkey's arm. The lady gasped before turning into a neutral face. "Oh my, you are called by the monkey's paw. What little desire do you have that burns so brightly that you would give anything for it?" "What's a monkey's paw?" asked Chase. "A monkey's paw is a magical item that shall grant you a number of wishes based on the number of fingers unfolded on the hand. Each wish shall come true until the hand is fully shut, but beware," she started to grin, which made a shiver go down Chase's spine, "for each wish comes at a price. A price you will regret in the end." Chase snorted, which made Morgana raise her eyebrow. "Oh, not a believer?" "Magic and curses are just fairy tales," replied Chase, rolling his eyes. "Look, I know you must be good at this whole mumbo-jumbo stuff, but if I get the stupid paw, can I leave?" "Of course, if you wish. But I suggest you grab something else," replied Morgana, leaning in closer. "For if you leave with the monkey's paw, your fate, and the fate of those around you, are sealed." "Right," replied Chase as he took the monkey's paw in his jaws and flipped it onto his head. "Just send the bill to Mayor Goodway." With that said, Chase walked out of the tent, while the dog lady just smiled. "See ya later, lady." "Oh, we will meet again," replied Morgana as she watched him leave. Chase walked out of the tent, glad to feel his sun on his face, when Marshall tackled into him. "Chase. You're okay. I thought she was going to bubble you in a pot and eat you for lunch." "I'm fine, Marshall." "Please get off me," replied Chase as he slowly got up. Marshall noticed the monkey's paw on the ground and sniffed it before sticking his tongue out. What is that? It smells dead. It's a monkey's paw, replied Chase as he picked it up with his mouth before flipping it on his back. It's some stupid trinket I had to get. Grants wishes if you wish while holding it, and the fingers fold to tell how many wishes are left. I think I'll just bury it in the backyard for the poor thing to rest. Sounds good, poor little guy, replied Marshall before the two made their way as far away from the tent as possible. They were about to turn the corner when Marshall gasped and made his way towards another booth nearby. This one was pink and had a big heart on top. Chase raised an eyebrow as he saw Marshall talk to the lady at the booth who was showing the pup various books. Eventually, after a few minutes, Marshall took one and nodded thanks to the lady before returning to Chase. Sorry, I figured I should get something too. What is it? Asked Chase. Blushing, Marshall showed the cover and Chase couldn't help but snicker. 1,000 Ways to Confess to the One You Love? He gave a teasing smirk at his friend. Does Marshy Warshai have a crush on someone? Shut up, replied Marshall, hiding his face behind the book. Look, I like someone. I'm not gonna say who, but I really want to tell them how I feel. I've been trying to for a long time now, and I need all the help I can get. It's most likely Everest. The two of them are close friends, and I think I've seen her wink at him. Chase smiled and put his paw on his shoulder. Just tell them. Look, they'll be glad to have you because you're a good pup. And if they don't like you? Well, then they're idiots. What if I'm not brave enough? Asked Marshall. Come on, you're one of the bravest pups I know, and I think you should go ahead and tell this pup you love how you feel, replied Chase. Marshall smiled at his friend and gave him a friendly nuzzle. What did I do to deserve a friend like you, Chase? Just by being yourself, replied Chase as he and Marshall made their way towards the exit. It didn't take them long to arrive back at the lookout where the other pups were playing with each other. Marshall told Chase he was going to put his book in his pup house before rushing off, just as Skye noticed the two. Chase held his breath for a bit as he took a moment to observe the cute little cockapoo whose bounce made her seem even more cuter than she normally did. He felt his heart flutter as the bad feelings from earlier at Morgana's tent faded away. Truth was, a part of him wished he could borrow Marshall's book so he could tell Skye how he felt about her the moment she joined the team. Hey, Chase, replied Skye, smiling at him with such pure look it was like an angel had descended upon him. The boys and I are getting ready for a game of kickball. You and Marshall want to join? Only if I get to be on your team, replied Chase, grinning. Rough. It's a deal, replied Skye as she rushed off to let the others know, not knowing that Chase was staring at her bouncing behind. Slapping at himself for such a rude thought, Chase made his way towards the back of the yard to find a perfect place to bury the monkey's paw. He sniffed the ground a bit, making sure not to place it close to other buried items, and soon found the perfect spot near the tree. Digging in, he got his paw dirty before he had a big enough hole to put the paw away in the dirt to rest. He glanced at it one more time and wondered, would it hurt to try it once? He thought about what to wish for and his mind turned back to Marshall. Well, he needs all the help he can get, so I wish Marshall and his crush would get together. He tossed the monkey's paw into the dirt and started to rebury it. After it was filled, he quickly put his scent on it to let the others know it was his spot and rushed to rejoin the others for kickball. Unbeknownst to Chase, the paw had begun to fold one of its fingers. The next day, Chase began his usual morning routine. He jogged around the lookout. Did 50 push-ups and crunches. Practices some pup-fu katas. And a round of pull-ups on the swing. He started to drink from his water bowl near the swing sets when he noticed that Marshall was out early as well. He was going to wish him good morning when he saw him heading towards Skye Pup House and waited outside, looking nervous. There was also something in his paws, but he couldn't get a good look. Chase, now curious, used his super spy stealth to sneak in closer to see what was up by hiding near the toy box. Slowly, he peeked out to see what it was, but what he saw made his body freeze up from hair to tail. It was roses. A dozen roses, all wrapped in a pink bow. Just as he began to comprehend this, Skye came out, yawning, before noticing the flowers. She gasped at their beauty before gazing at Marshall, who was looking at her with a heartfelt smile. I got these for you. Skye stared at them before she slowly took them into her paws. Marshall, what is this? Me being brave, he chuckled before clearing his throat. Okay, just like the book said. He took a deep breath and said, Skye, will you go out with me? In that moment, Chase felt his heart shatter. His best friend, the one who was like a brother to him, was asking Chase's crush out. Skye, the one who he had loved in his heart from the day he first gazed upon her eyes. A series of emotions flew through Chase. Shocked that the girl Marshall liked was not Everest, but Skye. Horrified that his best friend was doing what he had dreamed of doing for years. Angry that he was even attempting to woo his crush. He was about to march out when what happened next made him all but fall into the darkest pit of despair. Oh, Marshall. Yes. Yes, I'll go out with you.
Grim today, pull through, there will be a brighter day. So hold your head up high and breathe in deep.
I know there's something heavy on your mind. Control is something you will never find. Holding on to something you can carry by your side. When the world came to tear you down,
You stood alone and found that there is love all around you. So smile for the people that need to see you smile.
5 months. 5 months had gone by and you would have thought Chase would have been used to it by now. The kissing and hugging. The cute giggles and laughs. The sight of them going out to enjoy a date or watch the stars under a blanket. All this time, and Chase still hated it. Oh, he pretended it didn't bother him when Marshall and Skye announced they were dating. He cheered for them publicly, but privately he cursed and cried. When Marshall came to him for dating advice, he could have sabotaged him, but he didn't out of love for his friends. When Skye told him one patrol that being with Marshall was the best thing that ever happened to her, he didn't growl or yell, but calmly nodded. When the others said they were cute together, and the town congratulated two of their heroes getting together, Chase just stood there, watching, and hating every second of it. It should be me. That was the one thought that went through Chase's head during every single moment he saw them together. It should have been him. He loved Skye. He adored her. He wanted her more than anything in this world. And now she was Marshall's. He should be happy for them. They were his best friends. The three of them were Paw Patrol for a year before the others joined. It should be me. Should be what? Chase snapped out of his thoughts, turning away from the sight of Skye and Marshall playing tag. Looking towards Rocky, who was using a custom-made leaf sucker to pick up the autumn leaves, the recycling pup said, "You said it, it should be me." "What do you mean?" I mean it should be me picking up the leaves. You do it all the time, so I should be a good friend and help you out, replied Chase, quickly. Oh, thanks, Chase. Rocky wiggled his body until the leaf sucker was off his back. I needed a break anyway. I owe you one. Sure, replied Chase as he took it upon himself to put on the equipment. Think you can tune up my police car this weekend? I think the brakes need work. No problem, see you at supper, replied Rocky as he walked away. Chase grumbled as he got to work by activating the leaf sucker with a bark and started lowering his front body to reach down. While working, he kept his eye on Marshall and Sky, who had just tackled the Dalmatian, and gave him a kiss. One that he replied with a passionate kiss of his own. The very sight of seeing his so-called best friend locking lips with the girl of his dreams made Chase want to walk over there and rip them off. He didn't want to admit it, but he knew deep in his heart it was his own fault. He kept his secret crush close to him for a long time. Nobody knew of it. Not Ryder, not the pups, and not even Marshall. He never once thought of the idea that one of his friends held feelings for Sky as well, especially his best friend. Marshall never once made it obvious that he had feelings for Sky, not in all the years they had been together. However, what hurt the most was Sky's feelings for Marshall. It hadn't just been a spur-on-the-moment thing. She confessed to having them for a long time. It had always Marshall. Never Chase. Never him. He saw the two separate before kissing each other goodbye on the nose and heading in opposite ways. Marshall, with a big goofy smile on his face, walked over to Chase, who did his best to look normal and not the utter rage he felt deep inside at the pup in front of him. "Hey, Chase. I thought Rocky was doing the leaves. I thought I'd take over for him. You know, be a good friend and all," replied Chase with a lie. Marshall nodded. "That was nice of you. But then again, you're the nicest pup in the world." "Come on, I am not," whispered Chase, blushing. "No, I'm serious." "You're always there to help us with anything," replied Marshall, with a friendly lick on the cheek. "In fact, I owe you for helping me confess to Sky. If you didn't tell me to go for it and be brave." "Don't remind me," replied Chase in his head, but he continued to smile. "Well, I guess you can repay me by being the best pup at your wedding." Marshall quickly turned red and stuttered, "DDD, don't rush into TT things like that." Chase faked a laugh and slugged him a little extra hard on the shoulder. "I'm just kidding. I'm happy for you, Marshall." "Think, Chase. Hey, maybe I can repay the favor by helping you find a girl." "Everest is still free," replied Marshall. "Sorry, but she's not my type," replied Chase. "The only one I ever wanted you stole from me." "Well, when you do find a girl, let me know." "I'd be happy to help," replied Marshall with a loud yawn. "I'm going to get some sleep before dinner. See you." Chase waved goodbye, before scowling when Marshall wasn't looking. "Damn it, I shouldn't be acting like this. They're my best friends in the whole world. I should be happy, but why can't I?" He continued to suck up the leaves until his nose picked up his faint scent, indicating this was a place he buried something. There were technically scents all over the place, but this one made Chase pause. Something about this one was calling him. Taking off the leaf sucker and decide to dig. In a few minutes, he found what it was and tilted his head. A dead hand? No, wait. He took it out with his teeth and spat it out. "Isn't this that monkey's paw I got during the summer?" He remembered, because it was hard to get the feeling of meeting that old dog that gave him the creeps. "She said something about it granting wishes, but I don't. Wait." Chase paused and looked closely at it. One on the fingers, the pinky one, was folded. "Didn't she say that a finger is folded when you made a wish?" "But I don't remember wish." Eyes widening, he realized he did make a wish while holding it. He wished Marshall would get together with his crush. The next day, Marshall confessed, and Sky returned his feelings. Could it be? Did the wish come true? "No, that's impossible," said Chase, shaking his head. "Wishes don't come true like that. It's just a coincidence." Yet there was a thought in Chase's head. What if this did something? What if it made Marshall and Sky fall in love? Did that mean it wasn't real? If there was no choice involved, doesn't that mean it was forced love? Was it all a lie? He stared at the monkey's paw, torn for what he should do. Chase ate his dinner fast and kept conversation to a minimum. Thankfully, nobody asked questions, and he was able to return to his pup house, saying he was turning in early. When he was sure nobody was looking, Chase ordered the pup house's door to be shut, leaving him alone. He stared at the monkey's paw that he hid inside before eating, wondering if he should use it again or not. Maybe I need to test it out? Give a wish and see if it comes true or not. He could wish for money to help the Paw Patrol pay for better gear and equipment. There was also getting superpowers to become a superhero to fight crime. He could ask for world peace and end all suffering around the world. Heck, I can even wish I was president. Yet the only thing that continued to linger in his head was his previous wish. Could I reverse it? If the magic of the paw brought his best friends together, could it separate them as well? Sky would be free to pursue again, but Marshall would be heartbroken. Do I have a right to do that to my best friend? He's so happy. He closed his eyes, growling. Damn it, what am I thinking? I can't do this. He couldn't. Not to either of them. When it was way past midnight, Chase still couldn't put down the monkey's paw. It was like it was tempting him to use it in his mind. No matter what wish he wanted to do, all that went into his head was the idea of splitting Marshall and Sky apart. Deep down, he wanted to do it. However, he knew this was wrong in every level. Deciding to get some air, he put the monkey's paw down and decided to walk around the area for a bit. The moon was shining above his head as the sounds of his friends, snoring blissfully in their dreams, echoed in the area. He walked down to where the small pier they had was, only to see two figures already there. He quickly hid behind a bush and narrowed his eyes, focusing on the two figures that were none other than Sky and Marshall. He quietly sat there, watching them watch the sea before them. It's beautiful, replied Sky, sighing. Watching the moonlight water always makes me relaxed. It's even better having a beautiful pup like you to watch it with, replied Marshall, allowing Sky to nuzzle him. Hey, Sky? Yes, asked the cockapoo, tilting her head. Why did you fall in love with a pup like me? Asked Marshall, rubbing his neck. I'm not exactly the bravest or the most balanced. Heck, I'm a nerd in some ways. Why didn't you fall for somebody like Chase? Sky paused in her thoughts before replying. To be honest, I kinda did have a thing for Chase early on. Chase's eyes widened. But it didn't seem like he was interested, replied Sky before smiling at her boyfriend. So, I turned my attention to you. Plus, there are some traits you have that Chase doesn't. How? Besides pup foo and running, Chase is better at me in everything, replied Marshall, tilting his head. He doesn't have the kindness that you give, replied Sky, smiling. While Chase is passionate about being a leader and keeping people safe, you're passionate about keeping people happy and helping others outside of duty. You also have a smile that he doesn't. Sky sighed. I'm sure under Chase I would be happy, but I think with you I would be happier. Sky, replied Marshall, smiling. I actually didn't think I could confess to you if it wasn't for Chase. He's a great friend. Yeah, he is, replied Sky, looking at the moon. I'm glad he helped us get together. We really owe him one. Maybe we could name a kid after him, asked Marshall, with a laugh making Sky blush. I was kidding. I wouldn't mind, replied Sky, lowering her head but smiling. When we're older, maybe. Chase slowly began to walk away. He didn't want to hear Marshall, embarrassing talking about how early it was to think that. Or how Sky was just teasing him. He walked over back to his pup house and held out the monkey's paw in his paws. I wish Marshall and Sky were no longer together. And with that said, the second finger folded. Cell phone and turned turned on the flashlight.
Hey you, look kinda grim today. Pull through, there will be a brighter day. So hold your head up high and breathe in deep.
I know there's something heavy on your mind. Control is something you will never find. Holding on to something you can carry by your side. When the world came to tear you down,
You stood alone and found that there is love all around you. So smile for the people that need to see you smile. We'll get by, even if it's just for a little while.
It had been 2 days since Chase made the wish, and he was staring to wonder if he really was just kidding himself. Nothing indicated that Marshall and Sky were having relationship problems. No sign of one or the other losing interest. They were still happy as can be. I knew that thing was a bunch of baloney, thought Chase, as he stared at the couple playing tug-of-war against Zuma and Rebel. Maybe I should just accept the fact that I'm never gonna have Sky. Hey, Chase? You alright? Asked Rocky, walking over towards the police pup who grumbled a hello. You seem really grumpy today. Everything okay? I'm fine, replied Chase, closing his eyes. I just didn't get enough sleep last night. Well, if you're sure, replied Rocky, shrugging as he started to walk away before he paused and sighed. Does this have anything to do with Marshall and Sky being together? Chase's eyes went wide open as he slowly turned to Rocky, who was giving him a look that said, "Don't lie to me." The German shepherd opened his mouth to deny it but sighed and whimpered. How long? To be honest? I noticed it only recently. You always look spaced out when you're staring at them, even on missions, answered Rocky as he sat down beside his friend. Did you like Sky too? Chase nodded his head. Wow, I guess that explains a lot. Your behavior and all, I mean. Long time? Chase nodded again. I see. Why him and not me? Asked Chase, shaking his head. I don't want to keep thinking this, but I can't help but ask it every day. What is it about him that she likes? Well, he's funny. Kind. Loves to play a lot. I don't know, other than that I guess it was just meant to be, asked Rocky, shrugging. I've never been in love, so I wouldn't know what to say. He then stared at Chase with a worried look. You aren't going to do anything drastic, are you? I already did, and it didn't do anything, replied Chase, not bothering to mention the monkey's paw still in his pup house. No, I'm just gonna get used to it. That's the mature thing to do, Chase, said Rocky, nodding with approval. That's when their pup tags lit up as Ryder's voice followed suit. Paw Patrol. To the lookout. Ryder needs us, shouted the pups as they all rushed over to the lookout with excited howls in the air. Chase quickly put away his feelings to focus on the mission to come. If there was one thing Chase could do, it was put his emotions away for the sake of the team. They all managed to get inside, but Marshall, last as always, managed to trip from walking too fast. Whoa! Shouted Marshall as he tumbled inside. Look out! Shouted Zuma, but it was too late as they were all bowled over. Chase flew up in the air before landing hard on some pup. That said pup happened to be Sky, who was looking at him with her beautiful eyes as he stared back right on top of her. He froze in place upon seeing that their lips were close to each other. To the point where he could smell her scent from her mouth, mixed in with Marshall's from a previous kiss. For a second, all of time seems to freeze as he felt more at peace at that moment than he had in the past few months. Hey, get your own girlfriend, giggled Marshall as he playfully pushed Chase off. Chase shook his head, almost ready to snap at Marshall for ruining the moment until he quickly realized where he was. Well, I was just keeping her warm for you. But let's try a three-way when we're older, teased Sky with a wink that made all the boys blush and snicker. Who knew Sky had a dirty mind, replied Rubble, laughing as the elevator went up. Comes with hanging around you boys all day, stated Sky as the elevator stopped halfway. Standing in place, they waited as their lockers opened, revealing their uniforms, which were carried by claws and other machines. They each stood still, only moving when necessary as the mechanical limbs helped them put on their respective clothing. Instead of his normal police officer uniform, Chase was receiving his super spy outfit, which was only used for specific missions. Usually, getting your special outfit was a sign that you were on the mission. He wasn't the only one, as Marshall was getting his EMT outfit too. Afterwards, the next set of lockers opened, revealing their pup packs. Both Chase's super spy pup pack and Marshall's EMT pup pack were among the normal ones. Once their equipment was hooked up, the six waited for the elevator to continue upward, where they soon reached the top. Doors opening, they jumped out and stood in proper order, as straight as can be, their faces at attention. Chase, pressing his paw on the floor, replied, "Paw Patrol." "Thanks for coming, pups. We got a few lost people in the woods today," replied Ryder as he pressed his pup pad, causing the big TV screen to appear. It showed a family of 4 walking through the trees happily. A family by the name of Johnson was taking a nature walk when they came across a bear. An angry bear suddenly appeared in front of the family, and they all scattered in different directions. The 4 of them fled, but they got separated along the way. The father is currently with Jake and Everest, who reported what's going on. "Is that bear still in the area, Ryder?" asked Sky, looking worried. "We don't know, but it's best to be cautious, just in case. Someone could end up getting hurt," replied Ryder. "Remember, you just need to stay still when dealing with a bear or play dead to make it go away." "Like this?" "Blah." Rubble flipped on his back, making a funny face with his tongue sticking out, much to the amusement of the rest. "Kinda like that, Rubble, only a bit less funny," laughed Ryder before clearing his throat. "For this mission, I'll need." Chase's pup tag appeared on the screen, making him puff out his chest. "Chase," addressed Ryder, "I'll need your tracking skills and spy drone to help search for the missing family members." "Spy Chase is on the case." "I'll also need," continued Ryder as Sky's logo came next, "Sky. Your helicopter can be used to spot our missing targets from above. Use your goggle to report anything you see down below." "Yep. Yep. Let's take to the skies," cried out Sky, doing her signature backflip. "Last I'll need Marshall." The Dalmatians logo was next. They could be injured or hot from running in the forest. We should make sure they're in good health when we find them. "I'm ready for a rough rescue," replied Marshall, following it with a bark. "Everest and Jake will also be helping in the search, while the rest of you pups stay here in case you're needed." "All right, Paw Patrol is on a roll," shouted Ryder as he rushed towards his pole as the others barked in excitement. Once he was down the sliding pole, Chase, Marshall and Sky all rushed towards the slide in proper order. Chase, howling as he slid down, watched as his spy cruiser switched with his police cruiser from a hidden platform below, and placed in front of the slide. Jumping in the air, he landed in the seat and activated vehicle mode, allowing him to switch his pup house to his spy cruiser. Driving to the side, he watched as Marshall, slipping into his fire truck as always, and Sky landed in their vehicles. Sky quickly took to the skies, while Marshall went left, and Chase went right, following Ryder on his ATV as they went across the bridge towards the direction of the forest. In 45 minutes, the Paw Patrol arrived just outside of Jake's cabin, where they saw said owner, Everest, and a balding man with a mustache who looked worried. Jake walked over and gave Ryder a salute. "Glad you dudes could make it. We were just about to start looking." "Good thing we just arrived then." "You must be the father, mister?" asked Ryder. "Johnson." "My name is Danielle Johnson," replied the man, shaking Ryder's hand. "You have found my wife and 2 kids. They go by the names of Estella, Donald, and George. I just came from the western side of the forest, and they weren't anywhere there. They must be in the other areas." Let's split up and search in 3 separate areas, commanded Ryder as he turned to his pups. Chase, you'll head up north. Jake and Everest can head south. I'll take the eastern area. Sky can cover the skies above while reporting anything that catches her eye. What do you want me to do, Ryder? Asked Marshall. Just wait here with our guest unless we need you. Everyone ready? They all cheered. Then let's go. The pups howled as they went to work, Sky heading up the air with her helicopter, while Chase put on his sirens and went north. Everest waited for Jake to get on the back of her snowmobile and drove off while Ryder followed suit, leaving a worried Danielle Johnson with a comforting Marshall who offered him a water bottle. "20 minutes had passed, but Chase had found no sign of the missing family members. Only one of them had been found in the past few minutes by Everest and Jake, who found one of the lost boys, Donald, calling for his parents. Already, they were heading back to Jake's cabin for Marshall to look at him to make sure that he wasn't hurt or dehydrated. Sniffing the air again, Chase tried to get a scent of humans, but there was nothing to go on. Ryder. I spotted the mother. She's just about a mile away from you to the left. Looks pretty tired too, replied Sky on their comm channel. Nice work, Sky. I'll head there soon. Chase, anything on your end? Asked Ryder. Negative, Ryder, sir, replied Chase. I'm going to activate my drone and see if I can cover more ground that way. He pushed the brake pedal to a halt and jumped out of his spy cruiser. Heading to the back, the truck opened to reveal his drone operation controls. After activating his password, he pressed the on button. Rough. Drone. His spy drone shot out of his vehicle and flew into the forest with the speed of a hummingbird. The drone's camera streamed everything it saw to Chase's video screen. Using his controls, he had the drone easily sweep past the trees and under bushes for any sign of the missing boy, George. He soon noticed something out of the corner of his eyes and pulled the camera to the left to see a hunched figure near a tree. Zooming closer, he saw a little boy in hiking gear, holding his knee with tears in his eyes. Got him, cried out Chase as he activated his pup tag. Ryder, sir. I found George. He looks hurt though, so you better send Marshall out here. Good work, Chase. Did you hear that, Marshall? Yup. I'm on my way. Chase activated the spy drone to stay in place while he headed back to his seat before driving forward. However, just as he began to move, he saw on the right side of the screen that George was climbing up the tree as fast as possible despite looking in pain. Chase's curiosity for this action was soon answered when his drone's camera spotted a bear roaring and coming closer to the tree. Oh no, replied Chase as he quickly recalled. Ryder. The bear is making its way towards George. Can you get to him in time? Asked Ryder. Yeah, but I don't know how I'm going to frighten the bear away, replied Chase. Don't worry. I got an idea. Just hang tight, Chase, cried out Sky. Hoping his crush could make it in time, Chase put his paw to the metal to speed things up. It didn't take long for Chase to arrive where the bear and George were. Luckily, the boy managed to reach the top of the tree despite his knee wound. Chase managed to get the bear's attention thanks to his sirens, but now was facing the said beast which was growling at him. Thinking quickly, Chase barked, net. Activating his net launcher, it fired a shot and it landed on the bear, who roared in anger while trying to shake it off. Sky? You coming with that plan? Asked Chase, knowing his net wouldn't hold the bear off forever. Right on your 6, Chase, said Sky, just as she flew overhead. Her chopper claw was already activated and carrying something. Using his goggles, Chase was able to zoom and notice it was a beehive. Wait, if that's a beehive. Where are the... Oh. Not too far from Sky, right behind her tail, was a swarm of bees trying to chase down their lost honey. "And release," shouted Sky as she let go of the hive. "Bombs away." Just as the bear managed to get the net off, it felt something smack its head from above, before tasting an all too familiar sweet taste. However, before he could enjoy it, the sting of a dozen angry bees, followed by even more of the swarm, caused him to yelp in pain. No longer caring about anything else, the bear ran away as fast as he could with the swarm of stingers behind him. Chase couldn't help but laugh at the sight, even if he felt sorry for the poor bear. "Nice work, Sky," yelled Chase from below. "Thanks. That will teach that nasty bear how to behave, am I right?" joked Sky. "Hey, I thought I was supposed to do the bad jokes," said Marshall as he drove up behind Chase. "Hey, Sky? Think you can bring George down so I can check him out?" "Sure thing." "Harness," cried out Sky as she lowered her special harness. Marshall and Chase both got out of their vehicles as latter contacted Ryder while the former waited by the tree, watching George come down. "Ryder, sir, we got George safe and sound. Marshall's going to be giving him a check over." "Roger, Chase." "I'll be there in 3 minutes," replied Ryder. Chase turned off the channel as he watched as Marshall got out his equipment while waiting for George. Just as he landed, Marshall's ears perked up. "Hey, did you hear that?" "Hear what?" asked Chase, tilting his head. "That sound? Kinda sounded like a his dash." And that's when it came. It was like a lightning bolt that struck from the bushes nearby without anybody noticing it. Time seemed to slow down as something long, black, and mouth open wide struck with its fangs loose until it buried its bite deep into Marshall's neck. A scream erupted from Marshall unlike anything Chase had ever heard of, but in an instant, he tackled his best friend in vain to save him. "Gah!" screamed Marshall as the black snake held onto his bleeding neck, despite the Dalmatian attempts to shake him off. "Get it of me! Get it off me!" "Marshall!" shouted Sky from above in terror as she watched below. George, frightened of what was happened, struggled back in fear. "Chase! Help him!" Chase tried to bite the snake off, but it quickly unattached itself from Marshall and dodged the bite. Quickly slithering around its prey, it took another quick bite, this time right on Marshall's paw, earning another howl. Only this time, it was silenced by gasps for breath as Marshall hacked and coughed, his face slowly turning blue as the veins in his neck began to show and turn purple. Chase screamed both in anger and desperation as he dived again for the snake, carrying less if he got bit if it stopped hurting his best friend. The snake dodged again, hissing as if taunting Chase. Between Marshall's body shaking from the poison entering his veins and the snake's slightly moves, it was hard to even catch the damn thing. Just as it couldn't get any worse, the snake bit a third time, this time right between Marshall's rear legs, where his genitals were. Despite not even being able to scream, the teary eyes and painful expression on Marshall's puffing and colored face spoke of the unbearable pain. Roaring, Chase finally managed to grab the snake and tossed it away, where it fled back into the wilderness. "Marshall!" shouted Chase in fear as he rushed over to his best friend and gasped in horror. The once joyful and shining face of Marshall was now one of tears and purple veins. His eyes bloodshot as snot dripped from his nose, in a desperate attempt for air. His mouth foaming as he struggled to say something while his eyes rolled back of his head. His body began to contort and shake as the wounds from the bites began to bleed, mixing with a small pool of urine below. Marshall! Hang on!" "Marshall!" shouted a teary-eyed Sky as she rushed to his side and tried to touch him, but Chase stopped her. "Let me go! Let me go!" "No, the poison might get on you," shouted Chase, struggling to stop her from touching him no matter how much she fought and screamed with her tears falling down her face. Chase didn't even notice he was crying too just as Ryder arrived and rushed towards Marshall, doing his best to handle this, but even the look on his face spoke of uncertainty. "What happens?" "Chase," shouted Ryder, demanding answers. "A snake. Black and quick. It ran away," shouted Chase, feeling his heartbeat increase as it became harder and harder to breathe. "This isn't happening. This isn't happening." Look for some antitoxin in Marshall's EMT truck. Maybe it might have something that can help. I'll call 911, shouted Ryder, taking out his pup pad. Chase dropped Sky, who rushed towards Marshall's side. He made a mad dash like never before to the EMT and smashed it open, pushing away everything just to find something for snake bites. Come on. Come on. Damn it. Where is it? Don't you dare die, Marshall. Don't you dare die. Thought Chase repeatedly, but no matter how hard he searched he couldn't find anything. Shit. He rushed out to where Ryder and Sky were and said, Sir, I can't find any. What should he stopped, pausing as he noticed their faces of disbelief and tears of sorrow. He slowly turned to Marshall, who had stopped struggle and now lay still on his back, his leg twitching every few seconds. His eyes were now fully up, his chest not even rising once. It took Chase a full 30 seconds to realize his best friend in the whole world was dead. Marshall? Get up, come on get up, whispered Sky, tears falling down her cheek as she struggled to smile. This isn't funny, joke's over, you can stop PPP playing DD dead. Sky, whispered Ryder as he slowly went to place his hand on her head, but she snapped at him to force him back. Don't touch me, screamed Sky, her eyes wide with both fear and anger. He's not dead. He wouldn't leave me. He wouldn't separate himself from me. Not like this. Chase froze upon hearing this. Not my Marshall, not my Marshy, whispered Sky as she began to crumble and lean back. Not him. Unable to take any more she fainted and Ryder caught her, screaming her name. Chase didn't do anything but stay frozen and stare Marshall's painful-looking deceased face. He wished they would be separated. He wished for something to break them apart. Something did. The one thing that would break anything together. Something that nothing could fix. Death. Death tore up his friends apart. And Chase had caused it to happen. Chase, feeling bile exiting his mouth, turned away and began to puke as it mixed with his tears as he realized what he had done. He had lost his best friend. And his paws were stained with his blood.
Hey you, look kinda grim today. Pull through, there would be a brighter day. So hold your head up high and breathe in deep.
I know there's something heavy on your mind. Control is something you will never find. Holding on to something you can carry by your side. When the world came to tear you down,
You stood alone and found that there is love all around you. So smile for the people that need to see you smile. We'll get by, even if it's just for a little while. If you smile for the Hey you, look kinda grim today. Pull through, there would be a brighter day. So hold your head up high and
Or less. Ups were short. Paw Patrol. When joining Paw Patrol, there was always the risk of some pup never coming back. After all, when you went into fires, dangerous locations, fought criminals, dealt with storms, and such other dangerous tasks, there was always the thought of being killed. Ryder had always made sure each of the pups were sure about joining this dangerous and risk-taking group, even at the cost of their own lives, and every one of them said yes. However, after such a perfect record and no losses of life, the idea that one of them could die never struck them for a moment, until it finally happened. Nobody, pup or human, could believe it. Everyone thought it was a prank, but it soon became clear and the news spread throughout Adventure Bay. Marshall was dead. Not by a fire, like other fire dogs before him, but by a snake. A random snake that came out of nowhere. The day after it happened, it was ID to be a black mamba snake, which was endemic to parts of sub-Saharan Africa. One of the deadliest snakes in the world, whose bite was said to kill a human in 30 minutes or less. A pup literally had no chance with a single bite, let alone 3. Everyone wondered how such a deadly and rare snake could be in Adventure Bay's woods when they weren't even close to such a place. Regardless, it didn't change the fact that Adventure Bay had lost one of its most beloved heroes, and the Paw Patrol lost one of their own. The pups all took the news as expected with tears, hugs, and screams of denial, but each handled grief in their own way. Rocky stared at the now empty pup house that had been decorated with flowers, stuffed animals, pictures and candles from those wishing to give their sympathies. He would stare at from dawn to dusk, sometimes crying, sometimes saying nothing, but never moving from his spot. Zuma and Rubble, the youngest ones, never left Ryder's side. Often falling into moments of crying, the two need their father figure to hold them for comfort, or one of the older pups. Zuma would sometimes cry out Marshall's name in the middle of the night while having a nightmare. Rubble had hidden all his Apollo stuff due to it reminding him of Marshall, who was the second biggest fan next to him. Everest, despite having seen death before in the Arctic, was also heartbroken over Marshall's death. She tried to be the adult and stay strong, but one night she broke down and held a mournful requiem below the glowing moon. Tracker, who had seen death as well, offered his prayers and even mentioned that the monkeys in the jungle carved a statue for Marshall in his honor due to Mandy's remembrance of him. Yet no two pups had it harder than Chase and Sky. Sky had been numb the first day, then endlessly crying the next, before shutting herself from the world in her pup house. She barely ate or slept, only coming out to help Ryder with the funeral preparations. The sight of her made all the pups feel for her, as it was clear that losing her boyfriend broke something inside of Sky. No longer did she yip around, flipping, or even speaking with that joyful passion she always had. It was like a part of her died with Marshall, and the rest was slowly dying within her. Meanwhile, Chase buried himself into making sure Marshall had the best funeral Adventure Bay ever had. Working with Ryder, with help from the townspeople, he spent every day either looking after the pups, or working to make the funeral as perfect as could be. Anything for his best friend. Anything for his brother. However, when the night came, and there was no work to be done, everyone in the lookout could hear Chase sobbing his heart out, crying out Marshall's name. Nobody said or did anything, mostly to respect Chase's pride, but they knew he was devastated by their loss. Yet, they didn't know the whole story. I killed him, thought Chase. The same thought that he had for the past 4 days. Rubbing his tear-soaked eyes, Chase looked at the photo of him and Marshall at Paw Patrol's first anniversary. It was when the two promised to be the best friends and rescuers until the very end. And I betrayed him. I got him killed. I wished it to happen. Chase had all but thrown the monkey's paw into the ocean when he came home. He cursed it. He cursed the gypsy dog. He cursed his wish, but he cursed himself the most. Every single moment he was awake, he could only hear the cries of Marshall screaming in pain while Sky pleaded for him to save the Dalmatian. At night, he saw the last moments of his best friend's life, before his very eyes over and over again. There was no denying it now. The monkey's paw was real. Chase's wish had come true, but not in the way he wanted. He never wanted Marshall to die. He never wanted anyone to get hurt. He wanted Sky, but his feelings were nothing compared to the friendship he had with Marshall. It's all my fault. I'm a murderer. I killed my best friend. Chase wanted to confess everything, but what proof did he have? Nobody would believe him. No court would convict him. He was going to carry this sin until he himself died and was judged for killing his best friend out of jealousy. Chase even thought of ending his life right now, but he couldn't do that to the team. They already were suffering the loss of Marshall. With nothing else, Chase put everything into making Marshall's funeral as perfect as it could be. It was the only thing he could do for penance, as tomorrow he would say farewell to his best friend. With the whole town arriving for the event, even visitors from outside, it was held just outside of town square. A whole garden of flowers was arranging in red and white to symbolize Marshall's colors, while the outer area was laced with black ribbons and funeral wreaths. Banners holding both the Paw Patrol logo and Marshall's pup tag symbol waved on the lamp posts, while one could see photos of Marshall smiling alone or with his friends up on display. Seats were everywhere for those wishing to join to sit, but there weren't enough, and some had to stand in the back. A stage holding multiple funeral wreaths with Marshall's name on it as well as the words "Rest in Peace" stood in the front of the hall, as well as a podium in the center for someone to speak. In front of it, between it and the growing crowd was the closed red and black oak coffin that was the size for a human adult, but inside of it was none other than Marshall. Surrounding it were nearly 100 flowers of all kinds, decorating it as if it was a thing of beauty instead of sorrow. All the pup of Paw Patrol, including Everest and Tracker, were in the front row with Ryder, Katie, Carlos, and Jake. Chase, from his seat, could see so many people and picked out more memorable ones such as Captain Turbot and his cousin, Alex and his grandpa, Farmers Al and Yumi, the Princess and Earl of Barkingburg, Ace, Luke Stars, and Daring Danny X. Even old enemies like Mayor Humdinger and Sweetie were among the crowd, looking just as sad. It only showed just how much not only Marshall had touched the lives of so many people, but how Paw Patrol did. It only further pushed the dagger of guilt into Chase's heart, however, as every tear, sob, and sniff for Marshall was because of him. He did his best not to cry on his tuxedo, but it was getting very hard to do so. His thoughts were interrupted as Ryder walked over to the casket, with every step taken as if he had a huge weight on his shoulders. Despite having seen the body, and even helped prepare it, Chase was still feeling the urge to look away as Ryder slowly opened the casket for all to see. Many let you gasps or sobs, including Sky, who was being held by Everest, silently crying with her. Ryder had spent a fortune making sure Marshall's body looked good for the funeral. It was so clean that it was hard to believe that he once had a purple face while in a pile of blood, saliva, and urine. Katie had groomed him to look like a prince as he lay inside the white velvet cushions, his head resting on a large blue pillow. Some of his favorite toys and tools, like his teddy bear and pup tag, were placed around him as well as flowers. His suit was light red, matching well with his spotted fur, as his paws folded gently over his stomach. If it wasn't for his eyes closed, the bright smile the corpse was displaying would have made you think Marshall was alive and well. The mayor came up on stage, dressed in black, and began her speech. Chase didn't listen to it. All he could do was focus on the peaceful corpse that lay before him. Everything about this was wrong. Marshall shouldn't be dead. No, Chase deserved to die. He had wished this, and it happened, and he couldn't change anything. Who would keep them up now that the laughter was gone and dead? A nudge from Rocky made him wake from his thoughts as he saw the pups getting to line up in front of the casket. He had missed the whole speech, as well as Ryder's. Too lost in his own thoughts. He solemnly got up and waited on line with the rest of the pups and Ryder. Their owner was first as he gave a sad smile and gently patted Marshall's head. "You were a good dog, Marshall. I'll miss you, and will always remember you." He moved on, wiping his tears as Zuma stepped forward next. He looked into the coffin and sniffed. I just wanted to say how much I looked up to you, dude. I'm sorry, I can't. He quickly rushed away, unable to hold his tears. Rubble was next as he looked into the coffin and stared at Marshall for a few minutes, before dropping in the first issue of Apollo Comics. Without a word, Rubble moved on, looking like he wanted to follow Zuma's run, but kept himself. Everest was next as she looked down at the eternal sleeping fire pup. "I hope you're happy up there in heaven, Marshall. I know you're looking down on us, and I hope you know that we'll miss you greatly. Please be happy and be at peace." She gently kissed his paws before leaving. Tracker was next, leaving a rose to lay in the coffin before muttering what sounded like a prayer in Spanish. When he was finished, he bowed his head, did the sign of the cross, and left. Rocky followed by sadly looking at his friend and lowering his head. "I don't really think there is an afterlife, but if there is one, I can think of no pup who deserves it more than you. He rubbed his eyes. I'll miss you so much, Marshall. I thought of you as one of my best friends. I just wish we had more time together. He looked at Sky and gave her a hug before letting her step forward. With tears streaming down her eyes, all Sky could do was look at the pup she loved with all her heart. Chase looked into those eyes, no longer feeling the jealousy that he once had, but instead only regret. Regret that he couldn't accept their love sooner. Regret that he had torn up his two best friends. A regret that he would carry forever. I love you, Marshall, whispered Sky as she kissed his forehead. I'll love you forever. She slowly walked away, leaving Chase as the last one. He walked forward, his paws echoing in his head as he stepped up. He looked down at his peaceful friend, and he saw himself in there. He saw Sky in there as well. Zuma, Rocky, Ryder, everyone. A piece of everyone in Paw Patrol lay in that coffin with Marshall, right by his side. This wasn't just a funeral for one pup. It was a funeral for all of them. For their innocence. Every mission, every game, every challenge they faced would have this single moment in their lives forever. Nothing would ever be the same again. There would always be the thought of one of them forever gone, not enjoying life with them as they moved on with their lives. Chase hadn't just destroyed his friendship with a pup he loved like a brother. He didn't just ruin the romance and love between two souls. He shattered the team. I'm sorry, was all he could muster before leaving for the next person behind him to say their goodbyes. He made his way to Sky and hugged her, letting him cry on his shoulders. One by one all the pups and Ryder joined. But it felt incomplete with only 8.
Kinda grim today, pull through, there will be a brighter day. So hold your head up high and breathe in deep.
I know there's something heavy on your mind. Control is something you will never find. Holding on to something you can carry by your side. When the world came to tear you down,
You stood alone and found that there is love all around you. So smile for the people that need to see you smile. We'll get by, even if it's just for a little while. If you smile.
Morning took time to recover from, but even after a month it's still fresh as the day they buried Marshall in the ground. Paw Patrol seemed to have lost the energy and fun it once had when they were a united team of pups, running around playing and having fun as a family. Without Marshall, it just felt incomplete. There were no more wipeouts when heading the elevator. No more accidents or clumsy messes. No bad jokes that still let out a chuckle. Even just staring at Marshall's empty house just seemed too much to look at before letting a tear out. Still, they did slowly recover. They smiled here and there, played a bit, and even did rescues without Marshall around. It still felt wrong, but they hoped in time things would get better. Only one pup didn't seem to think this, and that was Sky. Since Marshall's death, she hadn't smiled, flipped, or done anything but mourn. She would sit in her house alone, or stare at the sea at night. There were regular trips to Marshall's grave, and during missions she was often quiet unless needing to address something. It made everyone worry for her, but all she asked was space. Chase, however, didn't listen to this. Every day he tried his hardest to make Sky smile again. He was always by her side, trying to talk to her, and sometimes she responded. He gave her extra treats, did favors, and even took care of her when she was sick one time. Everyone thought he was doing it out of respect for Marshall, since Sky was his girlfriend before he died. Part of it was that, but the truth was Chase just felt guilty. It was his fault that Marshall was dead. His wish to see them break up due to his own jealousy had torn Sky's heart by taking the pup she loved away from her. Her misery, and everyone's for that matter, was on him. Today, Sky had shown interest in a movie and Chase bought the tickets and food for them to share. He suggested the others come too, but they weren't interested in a romance flick. Throughout the film, Chase saw Sky in full attention, most likely imagining herself and Marshall as the couple who struggle through hardship and deceit to have their happy ending. At the end he heard her whisper, "Why couldn't we have had that, Marshall?" They walked home in silence until they got home late. Sky thanked Chase for his generosity before leaving him to head to her house. Chase just sighed and walked to his own pup house, head low in defeat. Waiting for him was none other than Rocky, who looked at Chase with pity. "I take it didn't help?" "No," answered Chase as he stood up. If anything, she seemed to ache for him more. "Ryder's been thinking about getting her counseling," replied Rocky. "She'll refuse," replied Chase, shaking her head. "I've tried to get her to talk about it." "We all have." "If she won't open for us, what makes you think she'll open up to a stranger?" "Well, she's got to move on," shouted Rocky, stomping his paw. "I miss Marshall too. Hell, I'd give anything to have him spray me with water one more time, but we can't keep mourning like this." "Will we ever be over it?" asked Chase, closing his eyes. "Zuma still gets nightmares. Rubble's still sleeping at Ryder's beside. Even Ryder stares at Marshall's photo at night when he thinks nobody is looking. He looked at his own paw. The paw that held that monkey's paw that murdered his best friend. I can't stop wonder what ifs, and Sky looks half a second ready to break or rage against the heavens. He looked at Rocky and tilted his head. "How are you able to get over this so quickly?" "Because if nobody does, then we're never going to be happy again," whispered Rocky, shaking his head. "Look, nothing can't bring Marshall back. We all know this, but do you really think he would want us to be miserable like this? I'm trying the best I can to help the others, but you've only focused on Sky? Why not Zuma and Rubble? They look up to you as their big brother. Ryder's your owner, so you have responsibility to help him too." He then narrowed his eyes. "Chase, if you're focusing on her because of your feelings." Chase's eyes widened. "Wait, you knew?" "Of course I knew," replied Rocky, rolling his eyes. "I'm surprised nobody else saw it. It didn't really click until I saw how jealous you looked at Marshall when he was dating Sky. I didn't say anything because I respected your privacy, but if you're focusing on her to win you over because Marshall is gone, dash." "No. Don't you dare accuse me of that," shouted Chase, growling as he made Rocky back away in fear. Realizing he was scaring him, he paused and just sighed. "You're right. I did have feelings for Sky, but I realize that she'll never love me, and I'm okay with that now." He looked at Rocky with tears in his eyes. "I could have prevented all of this from happening. Marshall could be alive now if it wasn't for my mistake." "Chase, you tried to save him," whispered Rocky, mournfully. "None of us blame you." "Except for myself," muttered Chase. "I just want to make her happy again, Rocky. If I can make her smile again, then maybe I can do right by Marshall. That's all I want to do." Rocky looked at Chase for a long time before nodding. "Okay, Chase. I understand. Just promise me you won't forget the others too?" Chase nodded as he and Rocky shared a quick hug before Rocky made his way in the opposite direction. However, he paused and looked at Chase for a second. "Chase, what if you can't make her happy again?" Chase didn't answer. He just walked into his pup house and stared at a monkey's paw that still lay in the corner. He stared at it for a long time with his mouth wide open. How did it? What? He threw it into the ocean. He threw it as far as he could throw it, but here it was, standing right before him. He shook his head, growling. He was really starting to hate this magical, cursed thing. He grabbed it and burying it in the backyard again. He wasn't going to think about it. Hell, he wasn't even going to look at it or use it ever again.
Zet was a promise.
All the pups woke up to it in the morning. All the pups woke up to it in the morning. It was soft at first, but then it grew louder and louder until everyone in the lookout could hear it. Getting up, the 4 boys walked over to the front door where they saw something that made them freeze with their eye wide open. They had seen Sky angry before, and it was never pretty. One time, she got so angry at a prank Zuma and Marshall did that she peed in their water bowls and forced them to drink it. Yet this wasn't just anger they were seeing, but full-on ballistic rage. All directed at Ryder, of all people, who looked just as upset. The 4 of them looked at each other with dropped jaw expressions. None of them had ever yelled at Ryder before. Not once. They sometimes felt upset on something, but they were always respectful. However, this time, Sky wasn't holding back and her insults and cursing at Ryder were at a maximum volume. Some of the words made the older ones like Chase and Rocky gulp while the younger ones were too confused about what was going on. Finally, Sky stomped out of the door, but turned around and screamed at Ryder. "And if you do it, Ryder, I'll fucking quit. You can kiss my ass goodbye 'cause I will leave. I fucking mean it." She glared at the 4 of them and shouted, "Get the fuck out of my way." They did as they were told as let her stomp off. The 4 of them were left there, stunned, as they slowly turned to Ryder, who just shook his head and sighed. He walked over and looked at the 4, knowing they wanted answers. "Sky needs some space." "What the heck was that about?" shouted Zuma in both disgust and awe. "Why did she yell at you like that, Ryder?" "Yeah, she was acting like a complete butt," shouted Rubble, frowning. "She's normally so nice. What happened?" Ryder sighed and rubbed his forehead. "I was going to tell you a week from now, but I guess I can't keep it any longer." He took a deep breath and said something that made all the pups freeze. "I'm thinking of getting a new fire pup." You're replacing Marshall?" asked Chase, muttering the words yet feeling his heart slowly break. In hindsight, he should have seen this coming. They needed a fire pup. They couldn't keep doing Marshall's job forever. If they got a new pup, it would really mean that Marshall was gone. Someone new would take his place. Live in his home and live with them. Suddenly, Sky's anger all seemed to make sense. "I'm not replacing Marshall," replied Ryder as he hugged his 4 whimpering pals. "Marshall will always be a part of our family, even if he isn't here. But we need to be at our full strength for the town and anybody who needs our help. Sky found out from the papers on various dogs I've looked into who might be able to fill the position, and she wasn't happy." "I can't really blame her," replied Rubble, looking down. I don't want him to be replaced either." He closed his eyes and nodded. "But I understand we have to." Ryder gave a sad smile. "Look, we're still a team. I won't do this without you, but we need to do this. Maybe it might help us move on, and it would give you pups a new playmate." He stood up and rubbed the back of his head. "I'll go make breakfast. I'll talk to Sky later when she's calmed down. Please, give her some space, guys." The pups just stood there as Ryder left, silent as they tried to process what they had just learned. "It's really happening, huh?" asked Zuma, getting their attention as tears dripped down his face, yet he still held a smile. "Marshall's gone. He's not coming back. We're going to live the rest of our lives without him." He wiped the tears, but they kept coming. "We're going to get a new pup, a new fire pup. He just walked away, sobbing as he did. Rubble and Rocky didn't say anything, but they followed him. Chase, however, went the other way towards where Sky was. She was crying again, but this time her face was red with anger as she stared at Chase, who walked over, nervously. "What do you want?" Sky, look. "Oh, will you just leave me alone, Chase?" shouted Sky, getting up in his face. He backed up a bit as she continued, "You think you can just make this better? Well, you can't. Marshall is dead. Gone forever. And Ryder's going to replace him with some new pup who will never replace him in my eyes. I mean it, Chase. I will leave. I'll just go somewhere, and I don't care where. I wish he never died. I wish. She growled and glared at him. I wish the snake bit you instead of him. I wish you were dead instead. She turned away, heading into her pup house, as Chase stood there in silence. After what seemed like a full 10 minutes, Chase made his way back to where he buried the paw. He dug it up and walked back to his pup house, holding the thing. He knew this was wrong. It brought nothing but trouble, but maybe just one more try? Taking it in his paws, he muttered, I wish Sky was happy again. And the third finger folded.
Hey you, look kinda grim today. Pull through, there will be a brighter day. So hold your head up high and breathe in deep.
I know there's something heavy on your mind. Control is something you will never find. Holding on to something you can carry by your side. When the world came to tear you down,
You stood alone and found that there is love all around you. So smile for the people that need to see you smile. We'll get by, even if it's just for a little while. If you smile for the Hey you, look kinda grim today. Pull through, there will be a brighter day. So hold your head up high and breathe in deep.
I know there's something heavy on your mind. Control.
Chase didn't know if the effects of his wish were going to happen over the course of the next few days like his second one, or immediately like his first. He could only hope it was the latter. He saw the seriously look in Sky's eyes as she threatened to leave them should they get a replacement for Marshall. In all honesty, he was angry too, but he knew this was going to happen eventually. The truth was, in terms of job importance, Marshall was one of the big ones. Fires were a serious deal, and having a team medic was always useful. There was one time, when in the jungle, Rocky set off a trap that resulted in him getting an arrow in the rear. It would have been funny if not for the fact he was bleeding to death. Marshall stabilized him and performed surgery that ended up saving his life. It showed just how important Marshall really was on the team. To have him replaced, it just still couldn't fit into Chase's head. Still, for the good of the team, it had to happen. Exiting his pup house, Chase made his way to the lookout where the others were already arriving. All except Sky, that is. They lined up in front of their food and water bowls as Ryder went already to work filling them up. They all greeted each other while patiently waiting. Just as they were about to dig in, the doors opened and everyone looked to find a nervous Sky walking towards Ryder. She stopped in front of him, looking at him with her tear-stained eyes as Ryder knelt down, calmly waiting for her to speak. I'm sorry, Sky whispered, lowering her head. You're right. I know we need to replace Marshall. It's just that. Ryder's answer was to gently hug her and bring her close to his chest. I know. I miss him too, Sky. I wish he was here, but he's not. It's hard to accept that, but we have to. Sky, to her credit, didn't sob out in tears, but gently nodded her head and sighed. For the first time since Marshall's death, a smile appeared on her muzzle, which made the others pups sigh in relief. Chase couldn't help but smile as well. You know, it's been a long time since we did anything as a group, said Sky, shaking her tail as she looked at the boys with excitement in her eyes. Why don't we go to the beach and hang out all day? Hey, yeah. That sounds like fun. I'm game, shouted Zuma, roughing in agreement. I think having some fun would be a good idea, seconded Chase, nodding his head. Then I guess we'll have a beach day, replied Ryder as he got up from his knees. I'll start getting things ready. You pups enjoy your meal. Thanks, Ryder, the five of them replied as they dug in. Chase had already begun when Sky nudged him for his attention. Facing her, a small smile appeared as she whispered, "I'm sorry about yesterday." "Forgive me?" "Yeah, don't worry about it," replied Chase, giving back a smile of his own. "You okay?" "Yeah, I think I'll be okay," replied Sky before digging in. Chase couldn't help but cheer in his head. Looks like this wish might work. While they were preparing for their little beach party, Chase took some time to think about how his wish this time worked without consequences. When he wished for Marshall to gain the courage he had to confess to the one he loved, he did so without either him or Sky suffering from it. Only Chase did, having lost his own love to his best friend. However, he knew he would have moved on if he had stopped being such a downer and accepted their happiness. The second wish, in which he wanted them to break up, had been a devastating one. It killed Marshall, which did as he asked, but not the way Chase wanted. Maybe when I perform selfish wishes, others suffer, but not me? Which means the reverse if I do unselfish wishes? He thought as he put his favorite towel in his bag. If this is true, I wonder what I'll suffer from. He didn't care what it was. In fact, he wanted punishment for getting Marshall killed. There was no way anybody was going to believe him about the monkey's paw, so there was no chance of getting a proper trial for his crime. He didn't even murder Marshall if he wanted to get technical. A snake had done the deed, and there were plenty of witnesses to it. No, Chase would have to hope fate would punish him as well as whatever afterlife awaited. They say all dogs go to heaven, but that's not going to be for me, thought Chase as he zipped up his bag and dragged it to the Paw Patroller. Everyone had just finished packing as one by one, they entered the Paw Patroller. It wasn't going to take a long trip to the beach, so they just sat down and began to talk among themselves. Even Sky was happily talking to Rubble about what future movies were coming out and which ones she was interested in. Rocky, leaning over, whispered to Chase, "She seems better." "Did you do something?" "I just talked to her, that's all," whispered Chase. Rocky nodded with a smile. "Well, whatever you did, it seems to have worked." Chase could only sigh in relief. Yes, it seemed at last something had worked out right. None of them could remember the last time any of them had so much fun. It almost seemed like a foreign concept to them ever since Marshall died. Thankfully, none of them seemed to bring it up during the whole day. They managed to get a volleyball game going with Rocky and Rubble on one team while Sky and Chase were for another. Zuma was busy practicing his surfing skills and amazing a few crowds with them. "Sky, jump," shouted Chase as he bounced the ball with his head. "Rough," shouted the cockapoo as she flipped in the air, kicked the ball, and spiked it. Rubble tried to save it, but he missed by a mile as the ball bounced off the sand and onto his head. "Yes. And that's game." "Darn it," said Rocky, but with a smile. "You two make a great team." "We're the best," said Chase as he high-pawed Sky. "Wanna play again?" "Nah, I think I'm going to take a nap and tan my fur for a bit before we eat," replied Rocky, passing the volleyball to Chase. "I'll see you guys later. I'm going to go frisbee with Ryder." "See ya," shouted Rubble as he barked all the way to his amused owner who had the red disc ready. "You want to play frisbee too?" asked Chase to Sky, but she shook her head. "Let's swim for a bit." "You and me?" asked Sky with a wink, making Chase blush, but he nodded. The two of them dashed into the water and began to splash around. Diving under, the two swam side by side, looking at the fish and plant life below. Rising upwards, the two gasped for air. Chase was about to say something when he got splash in the face from a giggling Sky. Grinning, he dived under, but didn't reappear much to Sky's confusion. "Chase?" asked Sky, looking around for her friend. He reappeared behind her, tackling her and dunking her into the water until she got free. "You jerk," yelled Sky, but she was grinning. They splashed each other again and again until their arms finally got tired. Swimming back, the two lay their tired backs on the beach head, taking in deep breath as they let the warm sun dry them off. Lifting his head, Chase noticed they were further from their spot than he thought. In fact, there wasn't anybody around for a mile, but he could make out others in a distance. "This was fun," replied Sky, softly smiling as she stared into the clouds. "I almost forgot how fun the beach is." "Well, we can come back in the future whenever you like." "I'll take you even," replied Chase, smirking, but then he noticed Sky frowning. "Sky?" "Chase, thank you," replied Sky as she glanced at him, but her eyes held such sadness in them. "I know that I've been unappreciated of your help dealing with Marshall's death, but deep down I am glad to have such a friend like you. You're a good pup." A feeling of guilt wormed his way into his heart as he closed his eyes in shame. "I'm not a good pup." "Of course, you are. You're one of the best pups and friends I know," replied Sky as she nuzzled him. "Marshall always did, and I know you'll be okay." "Sky?" asked Chase, confused by what she meant. "The others will need you, Chase," replied Sky as she got up. "Wait, are you still thinking of leaving?" asked Chase, in horror. "I am." Sky nodded. I can't do it anymore. I just can't. I need to leave." "Sky, just give it a few more days. Let's talk to Ryder." "We can dash." He was silenced by Sky's paw on his lips. "It's okay, Chase. It's for the best. I can't be here anymore because everything reminds me of him," Sky answered as she sighed. "I'm going to a place where I can be happy again. A place that won't let me wake up in tears knowing my love is dead. I need this, Chase. I need it so badly." She then looked him in the eyes and begged. "Please, don't tell the others. They'll know in the morning, but for today, let's make it a fun day." He looked into her eyes and realized she was serious. His thoughts turned back to his wish. Was this really the best way to make Sky happy? To let her go? He still didn't know where, but Sky had always been welcome to join Ace should she want to pursue a career in stunt flying. Maybe she needs this. Maybe she really needs to be away to be happy. He closed his eyes and nodded in defeat. "Okay, but promise me we'll still see each other from time to time?" Sky bit her lip and nodded. "Yeah, we will." Chase couldn't help but feel like she just lied to him as they walked back to their friends. After a cookout dinner, everyone headed back into the Paw Patroller and back to the lookout. All the pups were tired from their fun, so it was decided to head to bed early. Chase and Sky walked side by side to their pup houses as Chase looked at Sky before she entered hers. She smiled at him and waved goodnight before going in. Chase, closing his eyes, walked inside his own. He rested his head on his pillow and wondered if this was the right thing. Was it right to let Sky go? After all this time? At least she isn't running away. She's telling everyone tomorrow. The others will be upset, but at least we can give her a going-away party. Closing his eyes, Chase drifted to sleep. Zuma's screaming woke him up. Chase, ever the alert dog, jumped up and looked around before realizing it was coming from the other end of the lookout. Fearing the worst, Chase rushed out, teeth ready to face any intruder as he struggled to handle the rising dawn. Rocky and Rubble were already crawling out, unsure of what was going on as Chase ran past them. He followed the screams until he saw the crying and horrified Zuma, who looked pale as he stared up at a tree in horror. Chase had never heard Zuma scream in such a way before. Never had the fearless pup he had known looked so terrified. Rushing to his side, Chase held him and tried to clam him down, but Zuma continued to yell as if the world had ended. Looking in the same direction, Chase felt everything in him stop as he stared at the figure hanging from the branch. A single noose tied around her neck, Sky swung back and forth with her eyes closed and her smile stretched as far as it could. Never had she had such a happy smile. Chase then screamed along with Zuma.
Hey you, look kinda grim today. Pull through, there would be a brighter day. So hold your head up high and breathe in deep.
I know there's something heavy on your mind. Control is something you will never find. Holding on to something you can carry by your side. When the world...
It should have been him. He should have died, not Marshall or Sky. They were in love. They were good pups. They had a whole life ahead of him. He was a jealous murderer who led his closest friends to their doom. All because of a stupid monkey's dead paw. Unlike last time, he didn't leave his pup house for anything. Ryder had to force his food and water into the pup house as Chase spent his time crying. He didn't care about his well-being, he was already broken enough as it was. All he could see was Sky's blissful smile as she swung side to side on the tree branch. It had been days since then. He didn't know what happened to the others, nor did he care. He didn't think about the funeral, or the wake, or the aftermath. He just wanted to lay there, suffer his guilt, and slowly wait to die. The monkey's paw was there by the corner, 3 of its 5 fingers folded, as it mocked him just by sitting there. He had tried to tear it apart, set it on fire, and even threw it away again and again. But each time he did, it just reappeared without him noticing. He hated it. And he was really starting to hate magic. It still had 2 thumbs ready to fold, waiting to be used. But that's what you want, isn't it? You want me to use you. You want me to make others suffer. You want me to suffer, is that it? Well, I'm not gonna. You hear me? I'm not gonna. I'll. There was only one way out. End it. Finish it all. Take his own life. Let the peaceful embrace of death free him from this curse. It didn't matter who was hurt anymore, he ruined his family beyond repair. What was one more death? So why aren't I doing it? He had been telling himself this for days. All it would take was one simple slip off the cliff. One swipe of a knife across his throat. Yet he still hesitated. Coward, coward. There was a knock on his pup house door. Chase ignored it as he just lay there staring at the wall, hoping they would just go away. It still continued as Chase grumbled and tired to cover his ears with his paws. Go away. The knocking continued. I said go away. It stopped, but then the door opened much to Chase's annoyance as he slowly turned around and saw Rocky staring at him with narrowed eyes. I half expected to see you dead in here. Sorry to disappoint. Leave and maybe you'll get your wish in a few days, grumbled Chase, turned to his side. You're acting pathetic, Rocky muttered, shaking his head as he sat down sighing. You missed the funeral. I didn't want to go, muttered Chase. She was your friend, Chase. And yet I couldn't save her. I can't save anyone. Rocky muttered something under his breath, but Chase didn't bother trying to listen in. Look. I get it, really, I do. Chase slowly turned around to face him. You think you're the only one who suffered from this? Zuma and Rubble are gone, Chase. Gone? Asked Chase, standing up in shock. What do you mean? They're traumatized. Ryder took them to a mental hospital, sighed Rocky, lowering his head. There's even talk of animal care getting involved and having us being removed from Ryder's care because of all that's happened. They think he's an unfit owner. That's bullshit, shouted Chase, stomping his paw. Ryder's been the best owner in the entire world. He loves us. We love him. Well, they think 2 dead pups, 1 from suicide, and 2 more in fragile mental states are proof enough that he isn't. Everest is okay since Jake is her owner, but we're not going to be so lucky. We'll be sent to separate homes. Paw Patrol is finished, muttered Rocky, tears in his eyes. No, whispered Chase, whimpering. He didn't care about his own fate anymore, but he did care about the others. Who will Ryder have left? His parents are gone, he has no family. I don't know, Rocky said, shaking his head. I just wanted you to know, because sometime soon, we'll be leaving here. He slowly got up and moved over to the door. Pausing, he looked over his shoulder and muttered, "You should talk to him when you get the chance." Chase didn't say anything. He just stood there in silence as Rocky left. It took an hour, but Chase finally managed to crawl out of his pup house for the first time in days. The sun's ray was almost blinding to him as he struggled to find his footing and breathe the fresh air. He also could smell how stinky he was, wondering if he should take a bath at some point. Heading into the lookout, he noticed how empty it was. There was no sound of laughter or the parade of paws jumping up and down. No TV or games being played. No treats being distributed by the snack machines. Not even the sound of Ryder playing his game on his pup pad. It was as silent as a graveyard. Just looking around, he could see what used to be a normal day in his mind. Marshall and him playing Pup Boogie as Marshall tired to do the tail spin only to wipe out. Rocky reading a book next to an open window as a cool breeze flew over his ears. Zuma and Sky solving a puzzle set while arguing which piece went where. Rubble eating whatever snack he could get his paws on. And Ryder watching his pups with a proud smile on his face like a father to his children. Just a few weeks ago it was all like that. Now it was all gone. His friends were dead, traumatized, or were about to be taken away. His family was broken. Their team was scattered. It made Chase wish this all went away, even with the monkey's paw in his paws. Closing his eyes, he made his way to the elevator and pressed the up button. The town of Adventure Bay was before him as the elevator slowly rose up. Pressing a paw on the glass, he wondered if he would still be here when Animal Care came for him and Rocky. Would they put him with an owner or orphanage in town or someplace far away? Would they never see each other again after this? The elevator ended as he slowly walked out, trying to find Ryder. He spotted him on a beanbag chair, looking at a photograph. Slowly, Chase walked towards him as Ryder slowly looked upward. There were dry tear marks on his cheeks and Chase could smell the water that was coming from his misty eyes. He didn't even hesitate, he just jumped into Ryder's arms and hugged him. The two stood there in silence. His first pup. His first owner. They won't take me. I won't let them, muttered Chase, sniffing. We'll run away. Grab Rocky, Zuma, and Rubble and just fly away. An island or something. We'll live there forever. Chase. Please, Ryder. We lost Marshall and Sky. I don't to lose you or anyone else. Please. Scratching his pup's ear, Ryder muttered, Chase, I'll do everything I can to keep you. I already got a lawyer coming and everything. He gave a smirk at his pup and winked. Trust me. I'm not going down without a fight. Chase gave a small smile and nodded before biting his lip. Sir? Ryder. He hesitated at first, but then shook his head. What if I told you I'm responsible for all this? Ryder tilted his head. I know this is going to be hard to believe, but I wished this happened. He then said it all. Everything he had been holding for days. The gypsy dog. The monkey's paw. Marshall and Sky's death. All his wishes. Everything he condensed to the point where his throat became as dry as a desert when he finished. Taking deep breaths, he looked at Ryder who was staring at him with a stoic face. Then Ryder just sighed and whispered, Chase, you don't need to make up a lie to make me feel better. But sir. It's the TR dash. Chase, please. I know you want to blame yourself, but you're not to blame for Marshall and Sky's death, said Ryder, shaking his head. Monkey paws are just superstition. The gypsy was just messing with you to sell you it, and it's got you acting like this. Chase, you're just imagining it. Trust me. He opened his mouth, but stopped himself. I knew he wouldn't believe me, and if Ryder doesn't believe me, who else will? He just nodded his head before slowly getting off his owner. Hey, I'm going to order pizza for the three of us. You up for some? Why yeah. I think I need a bath first. Can we watch a movie? Asked Chase, slowly smiling.
Of course.
It wasn't perfect, but Chase had felt more relaxed that evening since Sky's death. The movie they watched sucked, but it was funny to make fun of it. The pizza was tasty, and having eaten so little for so long, it wasn't a surprise that Chase ate half the box. Rocky even joked on how he could have eaten rubble under the table, but that only made them feel sad and guilty. Their two youngest were still in the mental hospital, unable to come to terms with what had just happened. Things went quiet after that. With a full belly, Chase slowly retreated to his pup house and collapsed with a sigh. Closing his eyes, he felt himself slowly falling asleep as he wondered what was going to happen. Would he be separated from his friends? Would he ever find happiness? Was it better to just get it over with? God. I wish they were alive again, whispered Chase as he slowly closed his eyes.
A force finger folded.
Many miles away in a cemetery. Many miles away in a cemetery, there were two gravestones. One holding the bravest fire pup Adventure Bay had known, and the other the most daring air pup they had known. The two of them had been buried side by side to rest in eternity. Both graves were covered with flowers. Some fresh. Some days old. All from those who loved them as heroes and as icons of their town. They had remained undisturbed for so long it was almost staring at a photo that was still for all to come. Yet, that was soon to change. A figure had come, one who had been looking for days to get this chance. Her stupid owner and that idiot of a duke were on some charity tour for the poor pups and children of Barkingburg. The thought of even getting near such dirty little rats near her perfect white coat made her nearly throw up. When she finally became queen, she would see to it that all those brats wasting tax dollars on orphanages were sent to workhouses or the factories so that some good use came of them. That money should be better suited for something better. Like statues of me, thought Sweetie as she walked up to the two gravestones, with a smirk. Shouldn't be too long with the Paw Patrol, no longer a problem. When she heard about Marshall, and later Sky, being dead, she pretended to be sad just like everyone else was. Her owner even held a day of remembrance twice and personally went to the funerals herself. Sweetie was forced to go, but she only pretended to look sad and regretful. In truth, she wanted to find that snake and kiss it for doing this. Two of her biggest problems were dead and gone, just how she was hoping for. Sure, she never outright tried to kill the Paw Patrol, as tempting as it was, but she wasn't going to ignore a gift in a horse's mouth. Sweetie never believed in a god, but there must have been one to bless her with suck luck. And with the rumors of Paw Patrol ending after Sky's suicide, it might as well have been Christmas. Of course, there was a different reason she was here. As much as she enjoyed whispering insults to both corpses at their respective wakes, she wanted to do something nasty to these two. They had stopped her time and time again from taking over the crown, and it was high time she put these two in their place. Even if they were dead. Good thing she drank a lot of water on her flight to here. Lowering her rump over Sky's grave, she sighed in relief as she began to mark her territory on the tombstone. That's right, bitch. You're mine even in death. She made sure to stop halfway to save some for Marshall. Humming herself the Paw Patrol's famous catch song in a funeral march tone, she failed to notice that some of the dirt over Marshall's gravestone was moving. Sweetie was ignorant of this, however, as she moved to lower her rump to spray her urine, not seeing the paw that slowly began come out. Hero pup graves defiled. Royal pet found dead at scene. Last night, Mr. and Mrs. Lee were going to visit the grave of their son who died in the Iraq War when they saw that the graves of our beloved lost heroes, Marshall and Sky of Paw Patrol, had been opened, their coffins smashed. Lying there, torn from limb to limb, were the remains of one royal pet sweetie of Barkingburg. Authorities quickly arrived at the scene to see if there were any traces of the missing bodies or the thieves that took them and murdered the young pup. She was torn apart like a piece of meat. You could see the teeth marks everywhere on her body with her blood and guts scattered all over the place, reported Officer McMadden. I even heard that there are bits of her, both inside and out, that are missing. Neither Ryder of Paw Patrol or the Princess of Barkingburg have given a statement yet.
Hey you, look kinda grim today. Pull through, there will be a brighter day. So hold your head up high and breathe in deep.
I know there's something heavy on your mind. Control is something you will never find. Holding on to something you can carry by your side. When the world came to tear you down,
You stood alone and found that there is love all around you. So smile for the people that need to see you smile. We'll get by, even if it's just for a little while. If you smile for the
When the news spread that the graves of two of Adventure
Katie.
Bay's heroes had been vandalized, it had sent the entire town in a fury of worry and rage. Never had such a horrible crime like grave robbing been done before. Nobody even knew who would have even done such a thing. Mayor Goodway immediately called the police to investigate, but along with them were Ryder, Rocky, and Chase. It had been their friend's rest place that had been disturbed. They were more furious than anything. Rocky even swore that he would kill the ones who did it. After investigating the area, Chase was quick to point out it had to be other canines that had done this. There were no human footprints, and the smells of dog fur, combined with the scent of decay, was too much to deduce who. According to him at least. When inspecting Sweetie's body, it was clear that whatever did this to her tore her apart, despite her efforts to fight back. She was torn limb from limb, teeth marks decorated everywhere. It was unclear as to why she was even here to begin with, but it was clear she wasn't the one responsible for this. Her body would be sent back to Barkingburg for a proper funeral after the autopsy. The tracks only lead to outside the cemetery and then ended. Even heat vision goggles couldn't track them. Ryder had composed a list of suspects on who could have done this. Since Sweetie was out, that left only a few of their past criminal enemies. The top two were already discounted due to them alibis. Mayor Humdinger and his cats were at a charity event with dozens of witnesses. Plus, Chase didn't sneeze, so there was no way the cats could have done it on their own. Captain Sid and Arby were still in jail after their last theft attempt, and a quick confirmation from their warden assured them that they were still in their cells. The list soon ran down to other criminals they stopped in their past years, but all of them had alibis or were in jail. Meaning whoever did this was new, and they had grudge against the Paw Patrol in general or Marshall and Sky. That left Rocky to figure out how it was done. He theorized the whole digging was done by Paw, yet the perps had to be gloved as the only traces they found were the remains of Marshall and Sky. The other thing that stunned was that the coffins looked like they were busted from the inside, but this was dismissed as everyone was sure that Marshall and Sky were dead and couldn't break out of their own coffins.
Vel von Poptit.
It's not here. It's not here. Where the fuck is it? Thought Chase as he turned his pup house inside and out. He had to wait until Rocky and Ryder were fast asleep until he started searching for the cursed monkey's paw. Why is it that the one time I wish to see it the damn thing won't show up? After searching under his bowl for a fourth time, Chase fell to his back and started to breath heavily. He felt his heart skipping ever faster with each passing second. He wondered if this was what it was like to have a heart attack. Damn it. Where is it? I need to know. I need to know. He had to know how many fingers were left. He remembered what he said. He wished his friends were back, but he swore the paw wasn't even in the area. He didn't even hold it when he made that wish. At least, I don't think I did. He was too tired from all the pizza eating and movie watching that day. His first day relaxing in God knows how long. He didn't if he was being paranoid or not, but he needed to know. He needed to know if he brought his best friends back to life again. Could even the dead be summoned back? He wondered as he turned around, rubbing his head. If they can, why didn't they just come back and find us? Just say it's a miracle or something. Unless the shock of being alive again after dying was too much for them. If there was an afterlife, how would it feel to one moment be a part of it and suddenly waking up breathing again while in a wooden box buried in the earth? And if there wasn't, it would still be just as bad. It would make sense the two would flee in fear and horror of their sudden resurrection. But that doesn't explain killing Sweetie, thought Chase with a growl of frustration. Sweetie may have been one of their villains, but neither Marshall or Sky would kill her without good reason. And even if it was in self-defense, the level of brutality was too much. It felt like there was so much rage inside each bite. Not to mention bits and pieces of her were missing. Almost as if she was eaten alive. There was a word that was lingering in Chase's mind. A word that began with the letter Z. If he was the Chase before he met that gypsy dog, he would have said you were mad, but after everything that had happened to him? He didn't know what to believe. Or to be more accurate, he didn't want to believe. Because then would be another sin he would have to face, and it would be the worst of them all. Had he not done enough to them? Did he not already ruin their lives by having them killed by his own desires? Did they not deserve to rest in peace at long last? How much more must I suffer until this finally ends? He demanded in his head, but got no answer. He covered his eyes with his paws, holding in the tears. He knew there was only one thing to do. If they were alive, if they were undead, I have to send them back. Back to their graves. And then I'll find the paw and wish something, I don't know what, and when the final finger folds, I'll be free of it forever. He just hoped that nobody else got hurt because of this. It had been days since he could sleep. Every night he would stare into the ceiling, doing his best to not close his eyes. He couldn't close them. Not when she was there. Hanging there without a care. Her smile as cheerful as the sun that reflected on her fur, yet as cold as her pulse. Zuma would then scream. Scream like his blood was on fire. He wanted to claw out his eyes. To put a nail in his brain. To just forget. Forget everything. Forget Sky, Marshall, the lookout, the rope, the tree, the smile, the damn smile. Like a constant routine, Zuma shed tears for his sister figure. For Sky, who was always there for him when he needed a hug or a smile. For Sky, so brave and beautiful that Zuma was only jealous of Marshall grabbing her first. She was an angel, now she had become one. Yet, the nightmares only gave Zuma a living hell in his mind. Unlike Rubble, who was as silent as a ghost, he just wanted to forget. He wanted to never see the lookout again. This room, this locked and barred bedroom, was safe. It was warm. It was without any death or pain. Just him. Him alone. Sometimes the nice men in the white suits came. They asked questions, but Zuma didn't answer them. He just asked to be alone. Away from everyone. If I'm with nobody, then I can't see anyone die. I won't anyone die. I don't any more death. He begged as he rocked back and forth, his knees hugging his chest. He didn't want to sleep. No sleep. No seeing her face. Just be awake. Awake. No more drugs to go to sleep. No more waking up at dawn screaming. Just, no more, no more. No more sounds? Zuma's ears perked. There was always sounds outside the door. People moving back and forth. Strange laughter or cries of pain. Screams, not as screams, but other screams as well. Sometimes the cart would come by with food and water. Other times it just passed. There had been screams earlier. A lot of screams. Different ones mixed with familiar ones. Yet now there was silence. He tilted his head. Why was there silence? Why did the screaming stop? He wasn't screaming. Should he scream? No, he didn't see her. So, he couldn't scream. He slowly got up. Moved from his bed to the door. It was unlocked. Necessary to use the bathroom. Not like the others who were locked shut and bolt. He slowly opened the door. Then he smelled it. The feeling came back. Death. Death. It was death. The smell of blood. The scent of death. No. 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 Zuma screamed as he rushed back to his bed and under the covers. Shivering, he covered his ears, but kept his eyes open. No more. No more. No more. Something was coming. He froze. Something was here. It was moving slowly. It smelled like death. And blood. And rot. It smelled of dirt, and yet it was familiar. He stopped right next to him. He didn't move. He didn't breath. He wondered if he was dreaming. He poked his head out. She was smiling at him again. Only she was missing her skin and had all teeth. Her eyes were sullen and rotten. Her fur was dirty and gray. Her ears were ready to fall apart. Her nose was all but gone. He screamed, hoping to wake up. She dived forward. No matter how much he screamed, she didn't stop smiling. Not when she tore out his throat. Or ate his heart. Or crushed his brain. She never once stopped smiling. And he never once stopped seeing it.
Hey you, look kinda grim today. Pull through, there will be a brighter day. So hold your head up high and breathe in deep.
I know there's something heavy on your mind. Control is something you will never find. Holding on to something you can carry by your side. When the world came to tear you down,
You stood alone and found that there is love all around you. So smile for the people that need.
The call came around the middle of the night. Mayor Goodway had reported that the asylum that Zuma and Rubble were in had been attacked, according to the residents there. They had all but screamed for help before being cut off by the sounds of something eating them alive as their pleas of mercy echoed until the line went dead. Right after hearing that, the mayor called Ryder and the remaining pups. The two instantly suited up and made their way to the asylum outside of town, where they were met with instant silence and despair. Chase could already smell the blood and guts from outside of the mental hospital, nearly gauging from the overall stench. Even the others could smell it too and looked to be turning as green as Rocky's outfit. Slowly, they walked forward with their flashlights on before opening the front doors. In an instant, they were greeted to a set of bodies lying around with bits of them torn open as if something ripped them apart with their bare teeth. "Oh God," whispered Rocky, turning away to hide from the gory sight. "What could have done this?" "I don't know, but we should stay together and find survivors, including Zuma and Rubble," Ryder whispered as he stepped forward. Rocky and Chase both looked at each other with worry as their minds turned to the youngest of them. The ones who had seen so much death that they couldn't handle it anymore. Fear began to creep into their minds that both of their friends were either dead or going through a mental breakdown. Chase, however, was getting a sickening feeling that a certain duo thought dead was behind this, but why did they attack her was beyond his imagining. The two quickly caught up with Ryder, slowly making his way down the hall. "Sir, I think we should wait for backup," Chase suggested. "If it wasn't for the fact that Zuma and Rubble were here, I would agree with you, Chase, but I lost 2 pups already, and I'm not losing another 2, Ryder remarked, gritting his teeth as his tone ended the conversation right there. Chase bit his lip but obeyed his owner. He only prayed that who he thought was behind this was long gone. They passed by numerous bodies of dead patients and doctors who were all killed in bloody ways. Some had their throats and faces ripped apart. Others were missing entire sides of their chest, and a few were even dug in with their rib cages exposed. Chase didn't need to be a medical professional to tell they had their organs eaten. Suddenly, the path split into 2 different hallways. Ryder looked at both directions before turning to his team. "We're going to split up." "Split up?" "Ryder, that's how everyone dies in a horror movie." Rocky shouted, whimpering. "Let's just leave. Zuma and Rubble are already dead by now. I don't want any of us to die either. Let's just leave, head home, and get the hell out of Adventure Bay. I don't want to lose you or Chase or even myself to, whatever the hell did this. We're not going until we find Zuma and Rubble, Rocky." "That's an order," shouted Ryder, making the 2 back away. He realizes what he had done before closing his eyes. "I'm sorry. I'm just scared for them. If we find them, dead or alive, I promise we'll leave. I'll even let you pups pick a new home for us to live in, but please, just this one last time, let's rescue our friends." Every instinct was telling Chase to just grab Ryder and run. He was sure Rocky was thinking the same thing too. Yet, even now with death staring at them in the face, he couldn't disobey him. The 2 slowly nodded as Ryder sighed and knelt, scratching their ears silently for a while before standing back up. "All right, I'll head left. You 2 go right." The 2 nodded and made their way down the right path with their flashlights on, hoping that they would see their owner again soon. Chase didn't know how long they had been searching, but so far all they could find was dead bodies and blood. Furniture was turned over or ripped apart, and there was no sign of survivors. Truth was, he didn't know where either Rubble or Zuma were housed during their stay here. None of them could stomach to face what they had seen come out of their 2 youngest members. One always having a nervous breakdown while the other was dead in the eyes. That's when they found what looked to be an important office. Pushing the door open, Rocky turned to Chase and said, "Keep watch. Maybe there's a record of where they are." Nodding, Chase proceeded to do so while checking both ends of the hallway with his light. A small clunking noise forced him to turn to the left, where he saw a small soda can slowly roll down towards him. He gulped and readied his net to catch whatever it was that was nearby, but when a paw tapped him on the shoulder which caused him to jump. He sighed in relief when he saw it was Rocky. "He's in the next cells over," said Rocky, nodding. Chase called his owner. "Ryder, sir? We found Rubble's location. We're going to check his room now." There was no reply. "Sir?" asked a worried Chase. "Zuma's dead." The 2 pups held their breath while staring at each other wide eyes. The call ended there, but it was enough to make the 2 close their eyes in silence. He didn't deserve this. That was all Rocky said before he pressed on. "No, none of us deserve this," Chase thought before following Rocky. The 2 of them made it to the room that held Rubble's name and slowly opened it, only to close it again in disgust and sorrow. Chase had only seen a second of Rubble's missing headless body to know it was too late. "They're dead, both of them are dead." Rocky wept as he turned to Chase, who looked at him with sympathy. "Why them, Chase? Why them?" Chase didn't answer, he just turned away and walked some distance before he sighed. "Rocky, I'm responsible." He faced his confused friend. I wished Marshall and Sky came back to life with a monkey's paw. They did this, Rocky. I'm the reason for all this misery. Rocky just groaned and shook his head. Chase, will you stop thinking such stoogy? Suddenly, something came down from below and tackled Rocky to the floor while biting him in the neck, causing him to scream. Chase yelped, but froze upon seeing who it was that was digging its teeth into Rocky's neck. Get it off me. Get it off me. Ow, wallagwai. It then ripped out a good chunk of the neck, causing Rocky to scream once more, yet it became weaker as blood began to pour out of it. With one last gasp, he lowered his head to the ground with his eyes half open and his chest no longer moving. The creature, once known as Sky, slowly raised her rotting undead face as she chewed Rocky's throat muscles in her jaw. At that moment, Chase wet himself on the floor and stared in horror of what his wish had done to his friend. She slowly began to move towards him like a predator. He tired to see in those sunken dead-like eyes a sign of the pup he once loved still in there, but all he could see was the monster who murdered the last of his friends. She charged forward, forcing him to roll away before rushing down the hall with her shrieking behind him. Just as she was about to jump him, he turned around and barked, "Net." From his pup pack his net launcher fired and hit its target, bring the zombified Sky down. She roared and hissed in her struggles to get free as Chase stared at her with pity and tears in his eyes. He spotted a nearby lead pipe and knew what he had to do. Picking it up with his mouth, he walked over to her and watched as she tried to get him to feast on. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry," he whispered before using his strength to mash the pipe on her head. She screamed as he did it a second time. Then a third. He kept hitting repeatedly even when her head had been turned to mush. He just kept hitting her as tears went down his eyes. He didn't know how long he did it, but soon he stopped and fell to his stomach in despair. His entire coat was covered in her blood, but his soul had been drowning it long before that. He slowly got up and summoned his pup tag. "R.R. Rider, sir?" "Nothing." He didn't even bother trying to call a second time. He knew what it meant. He laughed a bit before slowly getting up to find the last friend he had left in this world. He made his way to the crossroads in the halls, where he had split up from Ryder. He just kept walking forward, his feet directing him while his mind just continued to think about all the good times he had in life. His days saving Adventure Bay. The fun and games. The holidays. All of them special in their own way. A small smile decorated his lips. Life was good, but now? Now with all his family dead? What was the point of life anymore? He had ruined it. He had destroyed it. Now he wanted to end it. There was only way to end it. One way to justify everything. He hoped there was nothing after death, because deep down he was afraid of what punishment he would get in hell, but then again maybe it was justified. He continued to walk down the blood-stained halls until he heard teeth against flesh. He turned the corner and saw a sight that brought tears to his eyes. His owner, Ryder, was staring into the ceiling with his wide eyes and shocked expression as a certain Dalmatian he once mourned ate into his ribcage. Marshall, sensing new fresh meat, raised his blood-soaked jaw that was rotting to the point where you could see the gumless teeth. His sullen eyes and peeled-off fleshed face reflected off of the blood-soaked pool of his owner's life essence. His tail was all gone and the suit he was buried in was in ruins. Chase should have been angry, afraid, or even upset that Ryder was dead, but all he cared about was just ending this once and for all. "I should have done this a long time ago," he thought as he stepped forward. "Hey, buddy, remember me?" The growl on Marshall's lips didn't indicate a yes or no, but Chase didn't care. He just continued, "I would have given the world to see you alive again, especially since I'm the one that got you killed. I guess it's what they say, be careful what you wish for." He looked at Ryder and sighed. At least he's with the others now. Chase stood up straight and raised his arms. "Go on. Finish it. Finish me. Just do it, Marshall. Just come and kill me." And so Marshall charged. He charged forward with his jaws ready to pounce. Chase closed his eyes and awaited the final sweet release he had desired for so long. This was justice. He would die by Marshall's jaws and enter oblivion. His final punishment at last for his selfishness and the misery he had caused with it. This was what he deserved. It was what he wanted. And yet once again, he was denied it. In that sudden moment, a twist beyond fate itself, a part of the ceiling fell just at the right time and crushed Marshall's head in a wet squishing noise. Chase opened his eyes and felt his jaw dropped at the sight of his dead friend, again, twitching under the weight of the cement and rock that had fallen on his head and turned it into a squished melon. When it stopped moving, Chase silently just sat there trying to process all that had happened. He was alive. He was the only one left alive. Marshall was dead. Sky was dead. Rubble, Zuma, Rocky, and Ryder. They were all dead. He was the only one alive. Even when he wanted it, was willing to allow it, fate somehow let him live. And that's when he lost it. He cursed and screamed. He started throwing anything around him in any direction there was. He wasn't supposed to live. He was supposed to die. He had to die. Why would any power in this universe allow him to suffer like this over and over again? He tried to find something to end his life, a knife, a gun, sharp glass, rope, anything that could do it, be it quick or painless, but there was nothing he could find. God damn it, he shouted, gasping for breath. Fine. I'll just get in my car and drive off a cliff. Huh? You like that? He rushed back to the entrance and was about to break the door down when he froze. It was there. The thing that had caused him all the pain he had suffered since that godforsaken day. In the middle of the entrance, with a bright light standing above it, was the monkey's paw. With only one finger left unfolded. Chase growled and stared at the thing with such intensity that he could have melted it with his angry gaze alone. He walked over to the hand, and every desire to rip it apart came forward as he held it in his paws. With tears in his eyes, he screamed, "Everything is your fault. You did this. You did this to me. I hate you. I hate you. I hate you. I wish I never got you in the first place." And just like that, the last finger folded, and a second later Chase was gone. A flicker of a light from the lights made the entire room dark, before turning back on with no trace of him, nor the monkey's paw. There was a lot you could say about Paw Patrol police officer and squad leader, Chase. You could say he was a natural leader, brave, daring, athletic, popular, friendly, and even childish at times, but he'll vigorously deny it. Of course, one word all his friends always said that came to their minds was workaholic. It wasn't that Chase didn't know how to have fun, or even relax, but did tend to get too caught up in acting as a professional at times to the point where he often forget when he didn't need to. Whether it was training, patrolling, planning new team tactics, testing equipment, or even cleaning the lookout up, Chase had a bad habit of getting too caught up in the moment. Thankfully, Marshall was always there to drag his sorry butt away from duties and towards town where the two could relax. "Come on, Marshall, did you have to drag me by my tail in front of everyone?" asked Chase, glaring at his best friend. "Would you rather have me use the rope?" asked Marshall, grinning as the two stopped at a corner as the crossing light turned red. "Besides, you were driving everyone stir crazy with your antics." "All I was doing was making sure the lookout was secure." "We did have a break-in last month after all," replied Chase, huffing. "That was just Callie chasing after Chiquetta who took her mouse toy," giggled Marshall. Chase sighed, walking ahead of his best friend as the light signaled to walk. "Okay, so maybe I was a bit dash." "Hunnink." Chase turned to see what the noise was, but the moment he did, a large SUV smashed into him and sent him sailing across the air, before landing in a streak of his own blood. "Chase," shouted Marshall as he rushed over to his bleeding and broken friend. He shouted his name a few more times, but there was no response nor any breathing from the motionless pup. He shouted for nearby pedestrians to get help as she tearfully told Chase to open his eyes and hang on. The flea market behind them, that they were planning to go to, was all but forgotten in his mind.
Hey you, look kinda grim today. Pull through, there would be a brighter day. So hold your head up high and breathe in deep.
I know there's something heavy on your mind. Control is something you will never find. Holding on to something you can carry by your side. When the world came to tear you down,
You stood alone and found that there is love all around you. So smile for the people that need to see you smile. We'll get by, even if it's just for a little while.
Marshall knew that nothing lasted forever in life. There was an end to everything. Day turns to night. Summer turns to winter. And life eventually becomes death. Marshall had never thought he would deal with the concept of death at such a young age, but here he was at his best friend's funeral. He tugged at the collar of his tux, trying to ignore the itchy feelings as he watched others mingle or say their farewells to the open casket. It was a miracle that Ryder managed to hire good enough morticians and doctors to heal Chase's body so it could be with still some scaring, but compared to what he was when the truck hit him, it was a miracle to even see his face clearly. Closing his eyes, Marshall felt tears return as he raised a paw to his heart in an effort to stop the pain, but it did nothing. The memory of seeing his friend right there, clear as day, and then getting hit instantly a second later to his doom, had haunted him for days. The sight of Chase, lying there motionless, with his entire body broken and bleeding in a state of ruin, still managed to get a rise of bile to his throat before he forced it down. The only comfort he took was that Chase died on impact and felt very little pain before he was gone. He glanced at the others who were just as miserable as him. Zuma was being comforted by a teary-eyed Rocky while patting the sobbing lab on the back. Rubble was being held by Ryder, who Marshall had never seen cry so much as today. It wasn't a surprise considering Chase was his first dog and his oldest friend. He, Chase, and Marshall had all started Paw Patrol together. There was always a close bond between the three of them. And Skye? Skye was there by his side, looking at Chase alongside him. She had been the most support for him since Chase died, which was both a blessing and a curse. He had long kept his feelings for Skye a secret for so long that not even Chase knew of them. One night, when he had a nightmare and she came to comfort him, he couldn't help but kiss her. That kiss was returned and then nightmares soon stopped. The team didn't know yet, they both agreed to wait a while to announce their new love. It was awkward to suddenly have a girlfriend during a moment of tragedy, but there were often stories of lovers coming together during such times. And to think, I was all about to give up on asking her. He continued to watch citizens of Adventure Bay head towards the dark oak casket, surrounded by flowers of all kinds. He hadn't yet said his final goodbyes yet, but he was working towards it. When Alex and his grandfather finally left the casket in tears, Skye nudged him forward, which gave him the boost he needed to walk to the casket. Chase lay inside a white velvet cover while dressed in Paw Patrol outfit, the way he would have wanted to be buried. His police cap was positioned under his folded paws over his chest, and despite the painful death he had been given, his face looked like one of utter peace. Marshall didn't know if there was a heaven that they all went to or nothing awaited them in the great beyond, but the point was Chase felt no pain and was forever at peace. Chase. Marshall choked up a bit as he struggled to say something. He had given a speech earlier about Chase, but why did it feel so hard to do now? You were my brother, my best friend. I think I speak for everyone when I say there won't be another honorable or brave leader like you. Ryder, he's offered me to Chase. Marshall choked up a bit as he struggled to say something. He had given a speech earlier about Chase, but why did it feel so hard to do now? You were my brother, my best friend. I think I speak for everyone when I say there won't be another honorable or brave leader like you. Ryder, he's offered me to take leadership of the team. I've decided to take it because I think you would have wanted it. Taking a deep breath, he stood as straight as possible and saluted to the corpse. "I promise I won't let you down, buddy. Take a good long rest and, hopefully we'll meet again." He leaned down to kiss his friend's forehead goodbye before turning around to talk to the others while waiting for the burial to begin. However, unbeknownst to Marshall, the pups, or anybody there, a mysterious cloaked figure walked towards the casket. It was an elderly English golden retriever with one pale eye staring at Chase with a toothy grin. Said set of teeth was missing a few too. She wore a purple cloak with a hood covering half her face as she strolled forward as if on smoke. Nobody paid any attention to her despite her standing out. She stared at the body and smirked. "Oh dear. It seems you've fallen to a terrible fate, haven't you?" She slowly drew out a single item. A paw. A monkey's paw that was fully closed. "You left this, I'm afraid. Nobody escapes their fate or their sins. Not even in death." She gently laid the cursed item right beside Chase's head on his pillow and chuckled. "Sleep well, my friend. Sleep well. And thank you for visiting my store." And with that she left. Nobody noticed the paw lying there in the casket. Not when the final prayers were said and the casket was closed. It and Chase lay there in silence as he was slowly buried in his grave. He and the paw would remain together, both in life and in death.
Sent.
Adventure Bay, the friendliest town on Earth. The air was calm and the sun shined brightly. Every town has a hero, but in Adventure Bay, these heroes were pups. 6 heroic pups. This team was called the Paw Patrol. Their names were Marshall, Chase, Rocky, Zuma, Rubble and Sky. And their owner, a 10-year-old boy named Ryder. These pups were the nicest pups in the entire world. They would always help a friend in need and would never let anyone down. Never to make a smile disappear from anyone's face. Everything was just perfect. Until one day. The pups were playing soccer outside the lookout. "Pass it to me," said Rubble, calling Chase, who had the ball. "Okay," said Chase, passing the ball to the English bulldog. "Over here." "I'm open," said Marshall, calling Rubble. Rubble kicks the ball to Marshall and the Dalmatian ran to kick the ball, but ending up tripping over the ball and tumbling on Chase. "Sorry, Chase," Marshall said, looking down at the German Shepherd, who had a slightly annoyed face. The pups laugh and they continue to play their game. Zuma had the ball. "This is my Zuma Wific Deluxe kick," said the chocolate lab, running towards the ball. He kicked the ball and it went past Rocky, who was the goalie. "Goal," said Zuma, doing a victory dance. "Hey, no fair." "I wasn't ready," said Rocky, upset. "Rocky, it's just a game. You don't have to be mad about it." "Come on, let's keep playing," said Zuma. "Okay," said Rocky, passing the ball back to the pups. The pups continued to play, then Zuma got the ball and used his special kick to kick the ball. And again the ball went in the net. Now Rocky was angry. "Zuma, stop cheating," Rocky said, raising his voice at the chocolate Labrador. "I'm not cheating," Zuma said, annoyed. "This is the way soccer is played." "That doesn't mean you have to kick it so hard," said Rocky, glaring at Zuma. 1. "If you we going to be a big baby over it, then just go," said Zuma, angrily. This made Rocky even more furious. "What did you just call me?" he said, stomping towards Zuma. "I called you a baby." "That's what," Zuma growled. 1. "You son of a bitch," Rocky said, his eyes filled with utter rage. The pups gasped as they had just heard what Rocky had said. Zuma blinked a few times before saying, 1. "Dude. Just go," he said, pointing his paw towards the lookout. "Fine," said Rocky, storming off. "But just let's say one more thing. Our friendship is over." "Sounds good to me," said Zuma. "Zuma, are you okay?" asked Sky. "Oh, I'm just wet," Zuma said sarcastically. Don't you think you two were a little bit hard on each other? Asked Chase, raising an eyebrow. Zuma gave a small grunt. Well, he started it. If he didn't have to complain over a game, everything would be fine. I'm gonna go talk to Rocky, said Marshall, running to Rocky's pup house when he got to the pup house. Rocky was laying in it, face buried in his front legs. Rocky, said Marshall in a small and quiet voice. Rocky looked up, his eyes bloodshot with tears. What do you want? He said. I just wanted to talk to you about Zuma, said the Dalmatian. Rocky got up and got in Marshall's face, the mixed breed's eye glowing with anger. Whatever it is, I don't want to hear it. Now leave me alone. But Rock. I said leave me the fuck alone. Rocky screamed, growling while showing his teeth, cutting the Dalmatian off of his words. 1. Marshall gave a defeated sigh. Okay, he said sadly, and he walked off with his head lowered. Rocky just sat there, thinking of what he said to Zuma and Marshall. But he couldn't think clearly because his anger had taken over his mind. It would be better if Zuma were never in the PAW patrol, Rocky thought to himself. Maybe a nice walk will calm me down. Rocky got up and started walking down the street. When he got down the street, he heard a voice whispering. PSSST. Hey dog. 1. Huh? Who said that? Rocky said, looking around. Over here, the voice said. Rocky turned to a tree and saw a man peeking his head out from behind it. The man had a long black suit and a top hat and black pants and dress shoes. Who are you? Asked Rocky. I am Pierre, the man said with a French accent. I've heard you had a hard time with your friend. Wait. How did you know about that? Asked Rocky, with an emotion mixed with fear and confusion. Oh, I always know, said Pierre. I'm everywhere and I know what will make you feel better. He pulled out a watch and started waving it in front of the mixed breed's face. You are getting sleepy, mon ami. Which means, my friend in French, when I snap my finger, you will fall asleep and dream of every great moment you've had with your best friend. Pierre snapped his finger and Rocky fell asleep. Nighty-night, Pierre said. Then he started giggling heavily. Rocky woke up, but he was in a different area. It was the forest and it was night, about 10 o'clock. Huh? Where am I? Said Rocky, getting up, yawning and stretching his legs. That's weird, he said to himself. I don't remember falling asleep here. He started walking, calling for anyone who might help him. Hello? Is anyone out here? There was no answer. The only thing Rocky could hear was his voice echoing from around him. Ryder? Pups? Anybody? Still no answer. Rocky was starting to get scared, but then he got an idea. Maybe if I keep walking, I will find my way home, he thought to himself. With that, Rocky started walking, trying to find a way out of the forest. After about what felt like an hour, Rocky's paws were hurting. Maybe I should take a rest, he thought to himself. But before he could sit down and rest his paws, he saw the town of Adventure Bay. Rocky gasped in joy. Yes. I found home. I better go apologize to Zuma. Rocky was annoyed that he had to walk again. But he was so happy to see his beloved home. When he got to the town, he noticed something strange. The town looked a little odd. Cars were toppled over with broken windows and mirrors. The buildings were crumbled and there were messages on the windows that said, "Help us. There is no escape, and run while you can." But that wasn't the weirdest part. The weird part is that the town was completely deserted. Nobody or no pup in sight. 1. Where the heck is everyone? Rocky said to himself out loud. But then something caught the corner of Rocky's eye. It was a strange glow, a bright light that anybody could see from almost a mile away. Rocky turned to the light and then, he felt his heart drop. Right in front of him in the distance was the lookout, being consumed by flames. Flames. Death is upon us.
Hey you, look kinda grim today.
By Sir Horror
Pull through,
666.
there will be a brighter day.
Chapter
So
2.
hold your head up high
418.
and breathe in
By
deep.
Sir Horror
There's something
666.
heavy on your mind control.
Rocky.
There's something you will never find. Holding on to.
Rocky stared in horror as the lookout was being devoured by hundreds of flames. This can't be happening, it can't be, said Rocky, stuttering with complete shock. It's just a nightmare, Rocky, it's just a nightmare, everything will be. He stopped when he heard the crumbling pieces of the lookout falling to the ground. The fire cracking as loud as you could hear it from miles away. Oh my gosh. I need to save Ryder and the pups, Rocky said to himself. Then he darted like he had never ran before. He didn't care how bad his paws were hurting. The only thing he knew was important was his friends. When he got to the lookout, he could feel the fire warming his fur as if he were in an oven. Guys, it's me, Rocky, I've come to save you. No answer. Rocky started to panic. Please someone, anybody answer. Please don't be dead. He said, trying to hold back tears. But suddenly, Rocky knew what to do. I'll put out the fire, then I'll see if anybody is in the lookout and see if they're okay. The thought of him using water made the mixed breed shake with disgust, but he had no choice, he had to save his friends. He ran over to Marshall's pup house, or at least what was left of it, and he got Marshall's firefighting gear. Please don't get me wet, he thought to himself. Rough. Water cannon. The pup pack instantly changed into a water cannon. Water cannon spray, shouted Rocky. Then the cannon started spraying water at the burning lookout. Rocky struggled hard, but the fire was too high and strong. Damn it, he said to himself in frustration. Then he got another idea. He went to Marshall's pup house that was halfway burned down but still in use. Rocky grabbed the hose and turned it on and water came spraying out. The force of the water nearly made Rocky fall to the ground, but luckily the water had enough strength to put out the fire. Rocky rubbed sweat off his forehead. Phew, glad that's over, now I need to find my friends. As soon as Rocky got near the entrance of the lookout, he saw what damage the fire had done. What used to be a tall building. But now it was just a halfway burnt piece of charcoal. Rocky stepped inside the lookout with no need of using the convertible door because the building was a crisp. Guys? Where are you? It's me, Rocky, are you all right? No answer. Oh no. Where are they? Rocky was starting to panic, tears filling his eyes. Please, someone answer, he said through the tears that were dripping down his face. Then, Rocky heard a faint cough, a cough that sounded inches away from him. Hello, stammered Rocky, he couldn't see anyone through the pitch blackness of the what used to be lookout. Rocky wanted to find out who was still in the lookout, anyone who needed his help. He looked around for anything that could help him see who was still in there. Luckily, he found a flashlight laying on the floor. Arf. Claw. Rocky said, with a worried and fast-paced tone. He turned on the flashlight and shone it around the dark room. Then he saw an outline of something in the corner. Hello? Ryder? Is that you? He took a few steps to see what the figure was, and when he got close, he felt like he was going to vomit. Right in front of him was the lifeless body of Ryder, his arm broken and both of his eyes were gone and bloodstains all over his face and clothes. 1. That wasn't the only gut-wrenching thing. Laying beside Ryder were the severed heads of the pups, excluding Zuma. 1. No. No. This can't be happening. It can't be. Rocky exclaimed in a shaky and shrill voice. Rocky broke down crying, tears streaming down his face. Rocky was crying a river. Utterly in shock and heartbreak seeing his friends dead. Rocky then looked up, his face stained with tears. He noticed blood on the wall above his deceased friends. It was a message. Rocky rubbed his eyes and squinted at the message. His jaw dropped at the message which read, "Death is upon us." 1. Rocky felt so scared, he wanted to hide in a safe place. Away from this nightmare. Away from this hellhole. Then, Rocky heard a small faint groan of what sounded like a little boy. He shined the flashlight in the direction of where the groan came from. And what caught Rocky's eyes made his fur stand on end. He saw the half-alive body of a chocolate Labrador laying badly bruised and bleeding. 1. Zuma? Zuma? Continue reading. Add. New reading list.
Hold your head up high and breathe in deep.
Recommendations.
Something heavy on your mind. Control.
A different virus.
Something you will never find. Holding on to something you can carry by your side. When
499 by Sir Horror.
Stood alone and found that there is love all around you. So smile for the people that need to see you smile. We'll get by, even if it's just for a little while. If you smile for the Hey you, look kinda grim today, pull through.
The dark outline of Zuma motionless on the ground sent chills down Rocky's spine. He didn't know what to do. He was shaking too much from fear from seeing his best friend badly beaten to a pulp. Rocky ran over to the half-breathing Labrador. Zuma. It's me, Rocky, he said, shaking Zuma. Cough cough Walkie? He said. His voice quiet and froggy. 1. Oh, thank goodness. Rocky said with a smile of relief. What happened? He asked. Asterisk cough asterisk A. Monster, Panty looked pant like a man but he wasn't. Rocky's eyes widened with shock. What? Well, what about that message on the wall? He asked. Zuma grimaced as he tried to move, his whole body filled with pain. Ag. He used Pant Wider's blood. Coughs, that's the only thing I remember before I blacked out. Cough, he killed them all. Pants, all of them. 1. Zuma's low and groggy voice was now trembling. Tears fell down the chocolate lab's face as he looked up at a worried and heartbroken Rocky. 1. Don't worry, Zuma, I'm gonna help. Rocky, look out. Interrupted Zuma. Huh? Before Rocky could turn around, he felt a strong force at the back of his head knocking him completely unconscious. Rocky woke up. Huh? Where am I? He tried to move but noticed he was chained against a wall, but not just any wall. It was the wall of what seemed to be a dungeon. What? Where am I? Let me go. He panicked, squirming hard, trying to get out of the chains. Oh, my dear Rocky, no need to panic, a voice said softly and calm. WH. Who's there? Show yourself. Rocky yelled, stammering. He saw a silhouette of a man. But when the man walked into view, Rocky's eyes widened in utter shock when he saw the familiar face of the man, smirking maliciously at him. No. Rocky sputtered. It can't be you. It can't be. Pierre? That's right, Rocky. Didn't expect it to be me, huh? He said, still grinning. Why am I chained? What are you doing to me? Rocky asked, panicking. Pierre laughed. Let's just say, you're in for a treat. Rocky's eyes went wide. What does that mean? He asked. Pierre didn't answer. Instead, he walked over to a dark corner of the dungeon. Don't worry, I brought a visitor along. Lights s'il vous plaît, Pierre said in French. And with a clap of his hands, torches suddenly lit up. Then, Rocky felt like his heart was about to jump out of his mouth. Zuma. No. Rocky stammered. Right across from him was Zuma, laying unconscious on a torture table chained up. I brought him here for you to say your final goodbyes to each other. Starting with him. 1. Don't you dare touch him. Rocky yelled angrily through gritted teeth. I swear, if you lay one finger on him, I'll kill you. I'll kill you. Pierre let out another nasty laugh. Wow, that was a good one, Rocky, really. But let me ask you one question. Suddenly, Pierre's voice became demonic. Can you kill this? 1. Suddenly, Pierre's eyes turned into a glowing red. His teeth became sharp fangs. His fingers became sharp claws as sharp as 5 knives. Then he started to grow. Taller and taller until he was about 8 feet tall. Now, he said with his demonic voice. It's time for my snack. Rocky felt his blood run cold. He had never been so terrified in his life. Pierre began to walk to Zuma and grabbed the chain and pulled it off with a swift motion. Zuma, regaining consciousness, stared in complete fear at Pierre's horrific face. Story continues below. You'll also like 90 and 990 K Y Y/N. No. Not you again. I thought I managed to escape you. Before you tried to eat me. Zuma's fear was now mixed with anger. My friends tried to stop, but you killed them. I managed to hide from you, even through all the pain, I still managed to escape you. I will never forgive you for what you've done. 1. Pierre let out an evil and demonic laugh if it could kill anyone that heard it. Strong words from a wimpy pup. Pierre's smile faded. But you are the most annoying thing on this entire shitty place you call home. Go to hell. Zuma growled. Pierre laughed that nasty laugh once again. Me? Go to hell? That's a good one, Zuma, but where do you think I am from? Pierre asked with a scoff. 1. Now, Pierre started. Time for my dinner. He started to raise Zuma to his mouth, showing his sharp and yellow teeth. But stopped when Zuma was 3 inches away from his mouth and said, You remind me of chocolate. I love chocolate. 2. He rose Zuma towards his mouth. No. Stop. Yelled Rocky. But it was too late. Pierre already took a chomp off of Zuma's back legs. Zuma let out a blood-curdling cry of pain and agony as blood squirted from where his legs used to be, showing ripped skin tissue and bone. 1. Pierre. Stop. Rocky's fear was now turning into anger. Pierre was still chewing, then he swallowed and spoke. Tastes nice, but it could use a little sauce on the side. Pierre then took another bite out of Zuma, this time from his stomach. Zuma's blood-curdling yelp sent tears streaming down Rocky's face. Tears of horror and anger. Tears were falling from Zuma's face as well as he was losing blood at a rapid pace. Stay. Stop. Please. Zuma managed to yell. Pierre stared down at Zuma with a scowl. If you don't shut your little fucking mouth, I'll make your death even more painful. Do you understand? He said with pure fury. 1. You've already gave me enough pain. Zuma said through gritted teeth but with a weak and dying voice. 1. All right. I warned you. Pierre said. Then he grabbed Zuma by the head with his claws digging into the Labrador's skin. Zuma screamed louder than ever, a scream that made Rocky's anger rise. Pierre, stop it now. Rocky yelled. Shut the hell up, you silver little twat. Pierre said, angrily. Then, with one strong pull, Pierre ripped Zuma's head right off of his shoulder, making a loud ripping sound that sounded like paper being torn apart. Nuu. Zuma. Rocky yelled with complete and utter shock. That's what happens when you don't shut the fuck up. Pierre said. Then, he chomped down on Zuma's severed head and threw the Labrador's lifeless body down to the ground. Rocky's eyes followed the headless body of Zuma falling to the ground. The body fell on the stone ground with a loud thud. As Rocky stared down at the body, he had a vision of his parents and brother being shot and killed as a young and defenseless Rocky stared with terror, tears falling down his eyes as he hid in a tight space, hiding from the heartless, disgusting man who murdered his family. 1. The vision ended and Rocky felt a feeling that he felt towards Zuma. Rage. A rage Rocky had never felt before in his life. You're going to pay for that. Rocky screamed at the top of his lungs. He had never felt so angry in his life. He squirmed, trying to break free from the chains. After a few good tugs, he finally broke the chain and landed on his paws and stared up at Pierre, breathing and growling at the same time. You ruthless. Heartless bastard. Rage. A rage Rocky had never felt before in his life. Pierre laughed. You're so pathetic, he scoffed. Even when you're mad, you're still weak. This made Rocky's rage rise. Shut up. You killed my friend, now it's time for you to die. Pierre laughed again, but his laugh faded as he saw a green aura begin to appear around Rocky. The mixed breed's eyes now had no pupils. 2. I warned you. Rocky snarled. If you happened to lay a finger on Zuma, I would kill you. Now get ready, Pierre, your death is going to be quick and painful. You think you a weak pup like you can kill me? Pierre scoffed. Don't make me laugh. I've had enough of your pathetic jokes for one day. And I've had enough of putting up to your evil crap for one day. Rocky screamed. Pierre then spoke, if it's a fight you want, then it's a fight you'll get. He grabbed Rocky tightly with both hands and began to squeeze him. But Rocky bit Pierre's arm, causing the monster to drop Rocky and let out a cry of agony. Arg! You bastard! Pierre was now angry. But Rocky was angrier. Pierre grabbed at Rocky again, but Rocky was quicker. He bit Pierre's leg, causing it to ooze out glowing red blood. Arg! Pierre grabbed his leg as Rocky ran towards Pierre, pushing the 8-foot-tall monster back with great force, causing him to stumble back and fall down a ravine with lava at the bottom. But as Pierre began to fall, he grabbed the floor with both of his hands, dangling from the ground, trying not to fall. Rocky walked over to where Pierre was and with a great force, he stomped his paw down on Pierre's hand. Rocky grinned as heard Pierre's bones crack. Arg! Pierre yelled, with agony. Pierre started to speak. Wait, Rocky, please don't hurt me. I'm sorry. I won't hurt you anymore. Rocky could see the fear in Pierre's eyes. It was rare for a monster to be scared, but for Pierre, it was different. Rocky lowered his head down to Pierre and growled in his face. Sorry, Pierre, but it's too late now. You already killed my friends. They were my family. I loved them with all my heart. Rocky raised his other paw and his voice. I will never forgive you. Then, Rocky's paw slammed into Pierre's skull, causing Pierre to fall into the deep bottomless pit of lava. As Pierre was burning, he said his last words. Death is upon you. And with that, Pierre sank down into the lava, leaving nothing but bones floating above the surface. Rocky stared down at the orange glowing substance at the bottom of the deep pit. Then, he felt his anger start to fade. It's finally over, he thought. Then he looked over at what was left of Zuma. He began to sob. Zuma, I'm so sorry, he said through his tears. Then he heard voices. Voices calling out to him. They were saying things like, Rocky, wake up, and Rocky, are you okay? Just then, Rocky woke up. He found himself in the lookout with all the pups and riders standing around him. 2. Huh? Rocky yawned. Where am I? You're at home, silly, Sky said, laughing. Wait, I'm home? He looked around and let out a happy cry. I am home. I missed you guys so much. The pups and Ryder gave Rocky a confused look. Huh? Ryder said. Rocky, it's not like we were gone forever. Sorry, Ryder, I just had a strange dream. Wait, where's Pierre? Rocky asked. Pierre? Who's Pierre? Chase asked. I'll explain later, Rocky said. Don't worry about it. He then looked over to Zuma. Zuma. I'm so sorry I got mad at you while playing soccer. You were right. It's just a game and it's just for fun. 1. Zuma laughed. That's okay, Rocky. I'm sorry too. 1. For what? Rocky asked. Getting mad at you for getting mad. Everyone laughed. I'm going to play some soccer. Wasya. Zuma said, running. Oh, you're on. Rocky said with confidence. Then all the pups had a fun game of soccer. Zuma used his Zuma-wific kick and scored, but this time Rocky didn't get angry. Nice shot. Rocky said. Thanks. Zuma said. And with that, they had a great day of soccer. Not knowing a certain man was watching from behind a tree. You may have outsmarted me, Rocky, but next time, I'll make sure that death is upon you and your friends. And with that, he let out a quiet and evil laugh. 2.
Ja, das war's, Leute, für diesen Livestream. Ich hoffe, der hat diesen Livestream Spaß gemacht. Diese Livestream läuft seit 3 Stunden und 14 Minuten. Und ja, Leute, hoffe, hat es euch gefallen. Wenn es euch gefallen hat, Like nach oben, abonniert meinen Kanal und aktiviert die Glocke. Die nächste Der nächste Part wird erst am Samstag sein, zwischen lassen wir mal schauen, circa zwischen 14 Uhr und 13 Uhr kann es sein. Eine von diesen Uhrzeiten. Aber ja Leute, hoffentlich hat es euch Spaß gemacht. Dann ja, heute ist das was für das ganze Teil, für die erste Part. Und der nächste Part sehen wir uns dort nächstes Mal. Und ich bin Super Chase Gaming und ich verabschiede mich für heute hier. Und mein Team auch verabschiedet für heute hier. Und danke Team, dass ihr mir geholfen habt durch das ganze Ding. Und noch einen schönen Rest und einen guten Tag und eine schöne Nacht. Adios.